Act 1 of Woodbarrow Farm by Jerome K. Jerome. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Characters.
Piffin, read by Todd.
ToddHWallen Rollitt, read by Greg Giordano.
Luke Cranbourne, read by BeeswaxcandleMike
Stratton, read by redrun.
Mr. Purtwee, read by Laurie Wilson.
The Honourable Tom Gussett, read by Adrian StephensBaron
Von Schnorr, read by
Richard Hanningford, read by Richard Stibbard.
Ichabod, read by
Peters, read by Sandra SchmitColonel
Jack Dexter, read by Alan
MapstoneClara Dexter, read by Grayson Fisk.
Mrs. Rollitt, read by
AvailleRachael, read by Sonia.
Deborah Deacon, read by Jenn Broda.
Stage directions, read by MichaelMaggs. Synopsis of scenery. Act 1, Woodbarrow Farm, Exmoor. Act 2, 13A, St. James Mansions. Act 3, Scene 1, same as Act 2, or Library at 13A, St. James Mansions. Scene 2, Woodbarrow Farm. Time, the present. Woodbarrow Farm. Act 1, music to open act, an old English air. Scene, kitchen at Woodbarrow Farm, an ideal old farmhouse kitchen. From the smoke-blackened ceiling beams hang huge sides of bacon, strings of onions, and herbs and poultry. Over the great fireplace are guns, and in profusion everywhere are the homely furnishings of a prosperous farmhouse kitchen. A huge fire burns right in old-fashioned fireplace, with settle on each side. Door left centre at back opening on corner of farmyard. Latticed window looking out on yard to right of door. Table right centre, piled with linen waiting to be folded. Linen press left, door left below press. Settle in front of press. Mrs. Rollitt at table right centre discovered ironing. She folds up clothes as she finishes with them, and crosses and places them one by one in press left.
Rachel! Rachel!
Crossing left, then crosses to right at back of table right centre.
Drat the girls are less philandering about with the boys when they are wanted. Rachel!
Enter Rachel. She comes slowly forward to left centre.
Did you call, ma'am?
Did I call? Why, thee be getting deaf in the old age, sure, Rachel.
I was in the dairy, ma'am.
In the dairy? Well, and the dairy bean't a mile off, be it? I expect there were Joe's thick head twixt you and the sound of my voice, weren't there?
No, ma'am.
Whose were it, then?
Ichabod's, ma'am. I mean, Mr. Ichabod was helping me, ma'am.
What at? How often am I to tell ye I won't have that hulking scamp hanging about here after his work's done? Do ye understand?
Yes, ma'am.
Here's getting on for 8 o'clock, and the master may be home any minute as hungry as a hunter, poor lad, and nothing ready for his supper. Get down the ham.
Rachel goes to fireplace right.
And bring me in the frying pan and I'll do it myself.
Rachel, turning to go.
Yes, ma'am.
And don't be half an hour about it. Is Ichabod gone?
Oh, yes, ma'am.
Mrs. Rollitt returns to her work. Ichabod appears at door at back with a trout in his hand. Rachel, catching sight of him, stops and motions him to go away.
Ah, a good thing for un as he has. If I catch en here again tonight, I'll...
Rachel makes sign to Ichabod, who is up centre. Mrs. Rollitt looks at Rachel.
Lord help the lass, is she struck foolish? Bean't he a-going?
Yes, ma'am.
Well then, do it. Thee keeps on saying yes, ma'am, and there he sticks.
Drops eyes. Rachel makes sign to Ichabod. Mrs. Rollitt catches her. Ichabod does not understand Rachel, and tries to explain to her in pantomime about the trout, which he holds up and points to. Mrs. Rollitt follows Rachel's eyes and sees Ichabod. Rachel is struck dumb, and Ichabod grins and pulls his hair.
If thee don't take thyself off pretty soon, my boy, I'll do that for'n.
He makes no answer, but continues pulling his hair and grinning, making a few steps forward, and still holding out the trout. Mrs. Rollitt advances to him slowly.
How often am I to tell ye I won't have ye loafing around here after thee work's done, and thee mother waiting for thee at home, thee good-for-nothing young—
Eyeing the trout.
Aye, but he be a bonny on that.
Thought maybe he'd do for the measter's supper, ma'am. He were a-having his own not half an hour agone, ma'am.
Mrs. Rollitt, left with fish in hand.
Be a 3 pound on, Ichabod?
As full as an egg her be, just. Thee feel her, ma'am.
Oh, well, I won't say, but what thee art a thoughtful lad, Ichabod, and it will be main good for thee master's supper.
Enter Deborah from staircase left.
See, there's a clear fire. Rachel, and bring me the stew pan, and we'll boil un.
No, don't boil it, Aunt.
Takes fish from Mrs. Rollitt.
Let me fry it. Alan always likes 'em best that way.
Goes right centre upstage.
So undoes, lass, so undoes. Ah, thee know what the lad likes, thee shall fry it.
Hands trout to Deborah.
And I'll finish the linen while I've got my hand on it.
At back of table, right centre.
Alan will like that, I know. Where did you get it?
Ichabod, grinning.
What, me, miss?
Not poached, I hope, Ichabod?
Poached, miss? No, miss, I were trying to teach a fly o' mine to swim. That were all, miss. And when I took 'em from the water, there were this thing hanging on to the end of 'em, and I couldn't get 'em off.
Thee'd best stop a while now, Ichabod, and the girls will gie ye a bit sup. Thee mother will be main glad to be rid o' ye a bit, I take it.
Thank ye, ma'am. Mother's allus glad to be rid of me at supper time.
To Deborah.
Give me un, miss, I'll clean 'em for ye.
Takes fish from Deborah, goes down left at back of settle.
Shall I cook on, miss?
Nah, thee bring the pan in here, Rachel. I won't trust the master's supper to ye while there's a pair of breeches about the room.
Rachel crosses left with a toss of her head.
I'm sure I don't want 'em there at all.
Picks up buckets near door left downstage.
Ah, thee wouldn't have the lad there without 'em. Go and do as I tell ye.
Rachel hits Ichabod with bucket. Exeunt Rachel and Ichabod left door downstage.
The lad will enjoy it all the more if thee cook it for un. Ah, and he do enjoy his food too. It do me good to see un eat.
He does you a lot of good that way, doesn't he, Aunt?
Ah, yes, he be like his father were before him, a rare trencher-man. Ah, but they are better than those as doesn't eat much, but sits a-turning and a-smelling and a-grumbling at everything that's set before them, for all the world like an overfed turkey cook trying to eat potato peelings. Thee ween't hae much trouble looking arter un when I'm gone.
Deborah goes to fireplace right.
Oh, Aunt, how naughty you are, always talking of being gone, just as if you were an old woman.
No, lass, I've been talking of being gone now. I've many a year before me, please God. But it must come some time, thee knows, and I like to think that when I do there'll be someone to gie a lad his bit of food, and look arter un like, and, Lord, a man do want a power of looking arter, to be sure.
Deborah at fire right, making it up.
I think that's why we love 'em, Aunt, because they're so helpless.
Maybe it is. There must be summat to account for it.
And I suppose they be like the poultry. They get fond of us because we feed 'em. He does say I've got a good hand for cooking, Aunt.
Ah, yes, lass. It be a light hand for the kitchen and a cool hand for the dairy. It will make a good hand for a farmer's wife.
Takes Deborah's hand at table right.
I don't think Alan will want a farmer's wife, Aunt.
Lord, whose wife should a farmer want, then?
Deborah pokes fire right.
I don't think Alan wants to be a farmer at all. He says he wants to be a somebody, not a nobody.
Well, bain't a farmer somebody?
Somebody, Aunt, but not a somebody. Alan wants to be in the world. You know, Aunt.
Well, and he be in the world, sure, ain't he? Sure, I think I ought to know.
No, not in the world he means, Aunt. Not in the great world, as they call it.
Ah, he be in God's world, and that ought to be big enough for un.
Yes, Aunt, but it's not select enough. There's all sorts of common people in God's world. Alan wants to be in the big world of lords and ladies and big folk up in London. He says it's being buried alive down here. That he wants to be among the stir and bustle.
Mrs. Rollitt crossed to left, putting clothes in press.
Ah, that be only his talk. The young uns be all alike. They run arter shadows like the chickens do arter chaff. Why, I mind when I were a lass, I used to look in the glass and think I'd be a duchess. But the Duke didn't come, so I just married the uncle. The young ducks all fancies as they'll paddle off to the sea, but they live and dies in the old pond arter all.
And you think that your duck will live and die in the Woodbarrow pond, Aunt?
Helps Mrs. Rollitt to fold.
Ah, bless un, yes. The lads, they fancy that any place is better than the old home, but arter they've had a good look round, they know that the old home's better than any place else. He'll flutter about a bit, maybe.
Looks at Deborah.
But he'll settle down in the nest for long, and the children will be running about the house.
Deborah turns away a little.
And making it untidy, bless him, afore I close my eyes.
I wonder who he'll marry.
Ah, I wonder now.
Crosses to put linen in chest of drawers. Deborah right, folding linen.
There's Polly Steddles. He walked home from church with her last Sunday. I think he's a little sweet on Polly Steddles. Don't you, Aunt?
It bean't much good being a little sweet on a girl that size. It would take a power of sweetness to go round her.
Crosses left with linen.
She's big, but then men like big women, don't they, Aunt?
Ah, some on 'em goes in for quantity and some on 'em goes in for quality. The little ones, they go in for size 'cause they bean't much of it themselves, and the big ones goes in for sense 'cause that be what they be most in need of. And Alan, he's be medium, so he can just please himself.
And there's Miss Dexter, that he drives over to Minehead so often. He thinks a lot of her, I know.
What? Colonel Dexter's darter, oop at Luckett's Hill? Oh, yes, her'd be a fine un to make the butter and cure the hams, her would. Her be like them umbrellas they be a-selling at Peter's for 1 shilling 11 pence, only meant to be walking out with.
Near press, left.
Ah, but she's so beautiful, Aunt, and she's a lady.
Sighs.
Ah, there be a good many sorts of them.
She is a lady, isn't she, Aunt?
Her's got the clothes all right.
Sits left of table, right. A pause. Goes up and pats Deborah's cheek.
As if thee didn't know the lad were in love with thee self.
Deborah, tossing her head.
Sure, and I don't see how I should. He never says anything.
Ah, the men bain't much to say for theirselves, poor things. Thee must go by what they does. Why, the uncle kept company with me for 3 years, and un never said a word. The first year un only sot and stared, and the second year un put un's arm round my waist, and the third year un kissed me. And then mother said it were time to put up the banns, and her done it.
Ah, the man that wants to marry me will have to ask me ever and ever so many times, and plead. Oh, as if his life depended on it.
Tossing her head. At fire.
Ah, the lad be shy, that be all. He'd be frightened of thee.
Deborah, smiling.
Of me, Aunt?
Sure. I expect them be worrying hisself finely for fear thee don't care for a fancying thee prefers Jim Harkabuck, maybe.
Jim Harkabuck is a very nice fellow, and he does stare.
Smiling and going to her aunt.
Do you think Alan really does, Aunt?
Kneels to Mrs. Rollitt, who turns her head away right a little. Mrs. Rollitt, laughing and shaking her off playfully.
Does he? Why, bean't ye allus quarrelling with thee, and don't he eat twice as much anything if he knows thee cooked it? And besides...
Pauses and becomes absorbed in stockings.
Besides what, Aunt?
Why didn't I find un only the evening afore last, when un didn't know I were there? Ah.
Enter Rachel, left door, with fish in frying pan. Deborah rises. Rachel, crossing right and giving it to Deborah.
Shall I put it on, miss?
Deborah, centre, goes right to fireplace.
No, I'll see to it, Rachel. Thank you.
I have put some butter in the pan, miss.
Exit Rachel, left downstage.
Yes, Aunt.
Right of table, and seeing to fish with back to Mrs. Rollitt.
You were saying how you came upon Alan the other evening, Aunt, when he didn't know you were there, and he was doing something?
Ah, yes, it were Tuesday, and he not in love with thee. Why?
Taking up stocking and looking at hole.
Ah, look at that now. Blessed if I can make out where the holes come from, just.
What was he doing, Aunt?
Why, therein were we your...
Enter Purtwee centre. Mrs. Rollitt, turning and seeing him as he stands in the doorway.
What, Mr. Purtwee?
Deborah, in despair, goes to fire and cooks fish.
Well, he do surprise me. He be quite a stranger. Come in. Thee be just in time for a bit of sup.
Mr. Purtwee, coming down left centre, puts hat on staircase rail.
I couldn't pass the place without looking in. I've just left the trap outside.
Shakes hands.
And how are we?
Oh, I be middling well, thank ye. And how's yourself?
Oh, nicely enough, and...
To Deborah, crossing right.
How's Miss Deborah Deacon?
Very well, thank you, Mr. Purtwee.
That's all right. You look it, my dear.
Taking her hands.
Why, I declare she's getting quite a woman.
Ah, she's been that for some time. I'll be thinking more about getting a man now.
Purtwee crosses to left centre, laughing.
Oh, Aunt.
Did ye see the lad uptown?
What, Alan?
Ah, that be the only lad in the world I know. Did he see him?
Yes, I met him, and I wanted to have a chat with him.
Mrs. Rollitt is up left, near linen press.
But, Lord, there he was off to Lucot's Hill, and there was no holding him.
Taking off his coat. Deborah, who has been engaged in her cooking, at this, suddenly stops and looks up.
What was he going up there for?
Mr. Purtwee, stopping and facing round.
What for?
Who was he going to see up there?
Mr. Purtwee, laughing and folding coat.
Who is it he always goes to see up there?
Deborah turns a little sick at this confirmation of her fears. Purtwee, who is a sharp old fellow, notices the expression of her face, and the whole truth flashes across him. He pauses suddenly, looks hard at her, and then, assuming an ordinary laughing tone, continues. Mrs. Rollitt, up left, is engaged with the linen, and does not notice this.
Why, the Wallies, of course. He and Jim seem to be inseparable of late.
Oh, yes, I know. I asked him to try and see if the Wallies would part with one of their shorthorns.
Ah, that was it. Then, yes, I remember, that was it.
Turns away and looks back at Deborah, who has resumed her cooking. Aside.
Poor child. There's trouble for her, I fear.
Throws coat over chair left.
Well, what be going on up at mine head?
The same thing that is going on everywhere, Mrs. Rollitt. People lying and slandering and evil speaking. Everybody thieving and cheating and quarrelling.
Sits on table left.
Well, I guess I could have told thee that. Haven't thee any real news to give us? Tell us what one person's be a-doing. Never mind everybody. I don't know him.
Well, you see, Susan, a lawyer mustn't gossip.
Shakes finger. Deborah crosses to linen press left, sets tablecloth, and lays table right centre for meal.
Oh, hoity-toity. What be the use of being a lawyer and knowing things if you never tells a body a bit of news? And now I come to think of it, I've got a bone to pick with thee about that very thing. Thee never told me old Hanningford were going to die without leaving my boy so much as a brass farthing. Do you think as how I'd a-gone on sending the old skinflint the best turkey in the yard every Christmas, and the best goose come every Michaelmas, if I'd known as how he hadn't given us so much as the price as a suit of black, and Alan's his own cousin's child? A cousin is a cousin, even if be a distant one.
Sits left of table right.
Now, my dear Mrs. Rollitt, how could I tell he was going to die?
Thee knowed he were going to die sometime, and thee knowed he hadn't left the boy anything, and thee might ha' dropped me a hint. Mrs. Rollitt, thee might ha' said, thee's only wasting good poultry on a worthless man. The old sinner's a-going to die as hard-fisted and ungrateful as he's lived. It would have been a neighbourly act of thee.
But I didn't know he wasn't going to leave you anything. You see, he died intestate.
In what?
Mr. Purtwee rises.
Intestate.
Deborah laughs a little.
Without leaving a will. He left nobody anything.
Mrs. Rollitt rising.
Well, then, where does the old fool's money go to?
Why, to his son, of course.
Ah, where be his son?
Mr. Purtwee, folding his knee in his hand and looking at her.
On the road from Texas to Devon.
Sits right.
What? You don't mean to say thee found un?
Deborah gets dish off dresser right and puts it down in front of fire. Mrs. Rollitt and Deborah draw near, interested.
That's just exactly what I do mean. We traced him at last, found him at Port Chadbourne, black as a nigger and dressed as a Red Indian.
What was he doing there? Play acting?
No, cowboy.
Mrs. Rollitt sits left of table right.
Lord love us all. And do un know?
Yes, my agent saw him, went down to meet him as he came through with a drove of cattle, gave him my letters and told him everything.
Has he written to you?
No, didn't know how to write. A sort of half-savage he seems to be, he and all his companions. He said he was going to give the boys a 3 days' drink, or, as he expressed it, paint the town red, and then start straight for home.
When do you expect him?
Any day now. It was 6 weeks ago my agent saw him. He might walk into my office tomorrow morning.
Lor, to think o' it all. Him running away, driven away, as a body might say, by his own father, when scarce more than a babe, and now coming back to all his money. When do ye expect un?
Tomorrow, in 6 months' time. Never.
Never?
Purtwee rises, crosses to left.
Perhaps never.
Why, I thought thee said he'd started.
Started, yes. But there's a long road between that and arriving. He may be dead and buried, drowned, murdered for all we can tell. They're a rough lot where he's coming from.
Takes coat off settle left. Feels for snuff-box in pockets.
Well, thee's picturing a nice fate for the lad. And who would the money all go to if he were gone?
Why, the next of kin, of course. He isn't married.
And who be the next of kin?
Oh, there's no need to worry about that now.
Well, I'd just like to know, that's all. Would it be any of the Leeds folk?
Oh, I really can't say.
Gets snuff-box, puts coat on settle left.
I can't say at all who it would be. Why, there's about 100 different relations scattered all over the country, and goodness knows who it might turn out to be. It isn't a matter to be considered yet at all.
Lord bless us all, don't put thyself out, man. I didn't know as a buddy's relation were any secret. Provided they be combed by honestly. Don't tell us if you don't want to.
Turns away right a little.
No, Mrs. Rollitt. I'm not put out, only you see it's always a most complicated question, a next of kin, especially in the case of this kind where the man shunned all his relations. It might be someone in Hong Kong. It might be someone here in Devonshire.
Enter Alan, centre door.
It might be...
He is left, taking handkerchief from his overcoat pocket, and turning sees Alan in doorway and stops. Deborah puts on the fish. Alan, coming down right centre.
Well, mother.
Kisses her.
Why, my boy, wherever ha' ye been to? I were getting quite anxious about ye.
Alan, taking off his coat and hat and throwing them down at back.
Ah, I be a rare anxiety to ye, bain't I, mother?
To Mr. Purtwee.
Mother always fancies I've been run off with by gypsies if I be out more than an hour.
Crossing and shaking hands with Mr. Purtwee.
And how be Mr. Purtwee for the second time today?
Mr. Purtwee, laughing and shaking hands.
Your mother's a regular old hen with one chick, I expect.
Sits left.
Never thee mind, mother. Thee be quite right to be careful of me. There bain't another son like me in the whole country, be there?
Deborah at fire.
To the credit of old Devon be it said.
Hello.
Goes right to Deborah.
Now that just serves thee right for laughing at thee, old mother.
Crosses left and sits knitting next to Purtwee.
That be the worst of letting the children stop up out of their proper time. They always get so saucy. What have thee there? Lord bust me, I've got a vacuum inside of me. Poached eggs?
No, poached trout.
What's that?
Halloa, they've done it now. Why, Mr. Purtwee be Lord Netherby's lawyer, and he'll have thee hanged in chains on Dunkery Beacon, sure as fate.
Well, you see, I didn't poach him. I'm only frying him. There's no law against frying fish, is there?
Aye, well, us'll forgive thee this time, if you'll promise to do it again soon. Come, and give us a kiss.
Thee'll kiss the frying pan if you come any of your sense round here.
What? Won't thee? When I tell thee I've bought Jim Wally's tan and cream shorthorn for ye.
No. Have you?
I bought her this afternoon, and I got her for...
Left centre, turning to his mother.
I say, mother, our Deb's been and smoshed young Wally.
Done what to him?
Smoshed him.
Why, I never touched him.
Yes, thee have. Thee smoshed him, and that be the new Lunnon word. Made us in love, sweetie.
That's a funny way of doing it.
I don't know how her done it, but her done it. Why, he want £25 for the cow at first, and when I told him her were for Deb, he looked as stupid as an old cow himself, and said I could have her for £20. Then he asked me if she would like a calf.
We could do with one. What did you say?
I told him he'd better let the calf come down and ask for himself. He never saw what I meant.
All laugh.
Oh, I expect he saw it all right. Jim Wally is a very sharp fellow. There was no need to insult him just because he'd done a kind action.
Turns away right a little.
Oh, I wouldn't have said it if I'd known. I didn't know there was love with him.
Deborah, half laughing and half indignant.
Oh, don't be silly, Alan, as if I cared for Jim Wally.
I might guessed it too. Why, I expect that's why thee wanted the cow, so as to have something about the place to remind thee o' him.
Oh, you great stupid.
Why, look how you're blushing. Look at her face, mother.
Goes to back of settle right, takes up looking-glass which is hanging on settle right, brings it down and holds it before her.
Look at yourself.
She catches him a sound box on the ear. He puts his hand to his face and, crossing, puts back glass.
I didn't know thee you was so strong. That all comes of those squab pies of yourn, mother. I told thee were putting too much meat in 'em.
It's thy sauce, lad, not my meat, that's done it.
Rises.
Thee'd better try and make thy peace while me and Mr. Purtwee has a look round the outbuildings.
To Mr. Purtwee.
I've been wanting to get hold of thee for a long time. Thee's never given us so much as a bit of paint for the last 10 years, and the stable roof won't bear an owl on it.
Goes up centre with Purtwee. Alan, right near settle.
Thee must show Mr. Purtwee where the barn floor while thee's about it, mother. It be more like an earthquake than a floor.
Oh, I be a-going to show him more than he wants to see, don't thee worrit.
Aside to Mr. Purtwee at door centre.
Ah, they'd make a pretty couple, wouldn't they?
Mr. Purtwee, looking at them.
No, we must make 'em one.
Exit Mrs. Rollitt and Mr. Purtwee, centre door. Alan, after a pause.
Well, I've got thee the cow anyhow, and it's a beauty.
Thank you, Mr. Rollitt. It is very kind of you.
Don't mention it, Miss Deacon. Quite a pleasure.
Alan crosses to left, whistles, a pause, pretends to take off leggings, puts foot on settle.
Thee may bring me over the butter.
Alan, looking up.
Hulloa! Come back again. Butter? Certainly.
Takes it from chair off left on staircase, crosses with it, and holds it for Deborah while she takes some.
Jolly good butter this week. Who made it? Thee?
Deborah, other side of plate.
Of course I did. I make all the butter now, and the cream.
What? With them little hands? They don't look big enough to do anything but be kissed.
Deborah, looking up and smiling.
They can do something else, can't they?
Ah, they be like the parsons, not as soft as they looks.
Puts down butter on the table. Pause, during which Deborah proceeds with her cooking, and Alan stands watching her.
What a jolly little farmer's wife thee'd make.
Yes, I only want the jolly little farmer.
Ah, thee won't find many of that sort about. Farming don't pay enough for a man to get jolly on, nowadays.
Oh, we have enough to eat and drink and a little to spend on foolishness. You want so much.
Not more than what many has. Not more than a little bit of what this young Hanningford is coming back to. Enough to let a man see what the world's like a bit, instead of being cooped up all one's life, like an old cow in one corner of it.
But you can't live all over it, and one corner must be much as good as another.
Ah, thee don't understand it, lass. Ye women folk can stand day arter day the same, but we lads are restless with it. We feel as there's something big and stirring going on somewhere, and we long to be among it, to be in the great world. It seems to call me.
Puts foot on settle left.
To come to it, sometimes. I hear it of a night when I'm watching the sheep on the hill fields. Maybe it's only the sea breaking on the rocks down by Glenthorne, or the wind among the old oaks, but it sounds like a distant, far-off voice.
Gets left of table, right, with back to Deborah.
Calling to me, and it rings and echoes in my ears, till I feel at times that I must start up then and there and follow it.
Deborah, laying her hand on his arm.
Alan, lad, don't you remember reading one evening to us of the sirens, who in the old days used to haunt the sea caves and sing so sweetly that the sailors who once paused to listen were lured on till they were wrecked among the cruel rocks? May not the voices that you hear be like the singing of those sirens?
Maybe, lass, but the sailors couldn't help but follow when they did hear it.
Sits in chair left of table right.
What be the matter, Alan? Thee used to be contented enough. Now thee's always talking about riches and wanting to go away from the dear old farm. Something's come over thee, lad.
Puts hand on Alan's shoulder.
No, I were always like an old crow.
Deborah takes her hand away.
Sitting on a fence and looking at something too far off to see. But thee might be right partly, lass. Something has come over me. It made me want what I can't get more than ever now.
Deborah, with elbows leaning on table right.
What be it?
Alan rises, still looking away from her.
Well, I be in love, lass.
Deborah, after a pause, during which she has smiled to herself with a happy little sigh, and clasped her hands together in a sort of little joyful ecstasy, unnoticed by Alan.
In love?
I fancy it must be that. I think of her all day, and I dream of her all night, and I'm jolly miserable.
Have you any reason to suppose that she returns your affection?
I don't know. Her's never said anything.
Have you?
Me? No, I haven't said anything.
Most extraordinary that she doesn't propose. Have you given her any encouragement?
No, I can't say as I have much. I've looked at her, you know, soft-like, and sighed. But her's mostly been looking the other way, and ain't seen it, and as far as saying anything to her, well, I can talk to her all right about other things, and joke and laugh with her, but the moment I goes to say I love her, it seems as if I'd get a hot potato stuck in my throat.
Deborah, after a pause, with a coquettish smile to herself.
I can't do anything to help thee, I suppose?
Do thee think as her could care for a mere common farmer, Deborah?
Deborah, turning and looking at him earnestly.
Well, I think if he were a good farmer, and pleaded very hard, I...
No, lass, do we really think a girl could?
Advancing to her. Deborah, putting a hand to stop him.
A girl might, though of course a superior sort of girl, such as she appears to be, might think it presumption for...
Turns away right, puts hand on corner of table right.
Yes, I'm afraid her would.
Turns away left. Deborah, eagerly turning around again.
Then of course she mightn't. You never can tell till you try.
Goes to fireplace right. Fish is changed. Alan, scratching his head.
Blessed if I know how to go about it. I say, Deb, you've been proposed to. How do they begin?
Deborah, bending over fire.
Don't thee think thee'd better tell me who it is, and let me ask her for thee?
Looking slyly around. Pauses.
Who be her, Alan?
Alan, going up to window right centre.
Ah, I expect thee knows who her be.
Deborah, beginning softly to creep toward him.
How should I, when thee's never told me? What be her name?
Close to him, his back is still towards her, and he doesn't see her.
Eh?
Alan, without turning, looking out of the back window up right centre.
Clara.
Music cue. Business. Deborah stands still. For the first moment she hardly comprehends. Then she understands and stands staring straight before her with a wild, scared look, shivers, crosses back to fireplace on tiptoe, and bends down over it attending to the fish. After Deborah sobs, Alan comes down centre. Music dies away. Alan, half turning round.
Colonel Dexter's daughter, you know. They've seen her. Her were at the Barnstaple Ball, and I danced with her. And they said how beautiful her were, and her dress was all made of somewhat or other, and you...
He has gradually come close over to her right.
What be the matter, Dad?
Deborah, in a changed, hard tone, bending more intently than ever over her cooking.
Nothing. Nothing.
Alan, taking her hand.
Why, ye be quite cold, lass. Be thee ill?
Deborah, snatching her hand away.
No, no. There's nothing the matter with me. Don't be so foolish. Don't.
I say, Deb, have I said anything I oughtn't to? I know I'm always a-doing it.
A pause. Alan stands looking at her, troubled and bewildered. Deborah bends closer over the fire, then takes the pan off the fire, and with it in her hand turns to Alan, smiling. Deborah gives dish to Alan.
Yes, thee have. Talking to a cook at the very moment the trout is on the turn.
Puts trout on dish.
Served thee right if I'd spoiled it.
Lord, thee quite frightened me.
Pauses.
Yes, I went up there this afternoon.
Deborah takes dish from Alan, puts it down in front of fireplace. Deborah arranging fish.
Did you see her?
Yes, I saw her.
It doesn't seem to have made thee any more cheerful. Did thee quarrel?
Must never got a chance. There were a cousin or someone of that kind hanging about all the time. Just come over with some chap from America. Can't say as I like him much.
Thee'd best summon up thy courage and speak quick, or thee may lose thy turn.
Alan turns away left.
Go and tell Aunt supper's ready. Be quick. It's all spoiling.
Alan, moving quickly towards door left downstage.
Where shall I find her?
How should I know?
Alan looks round surprised. Sotto voce.
How the fire do draw out a woman's temper, to be sure.
Exit Alan left downstage. Deborah, left alone, stands right a moment without speaking.
What right has she to come down here and take him away? She doesn't love him. Couldn't she have found enough fine gentlemen in London to amuse her? I don't believe she's a good woman, and I hate her.
Stamps her foot.
She shan't have him. She...
Bursts into quiet tears, and slipping down on ground, buries her face in chair by the fire. Pause. After a few seconds, Luke Cranbourne appears in door, centre from right. Mike Stratton behind him. Luke pauses on threshold. Deborah hastily rises, trying to hide her tears, and stands right. Luke comes forward slowly, followed by Mike at some distance. Luke, after pause, coming forward, right centre.
I beg pardon. There was nobody about. Are Mrs. Rollitt and Mr. Rollitt at home?
Yes, they are at home. I will go and find them.
Crosses to left.
Who shall I say it is?
Thank you very much, my dear. Would you say Mr. Cranbourne, Mr. Luke Cranbourne, and Mr. Richard Hanningford?
Dick Hanningford?
Luke, smiling.
You know the name.
Old Mr. Hanningford's son. Why, we were only speaking of him just this instant, and wondering when he'd come back.
To Luke, hesitatingly.
Are Are you?
No, this is Mr. Hanningford.
Turns to Mike, who stands awkward and shy, left centre, looking at the ground.
Did you know him?
Laughs.
Oh, I am Miss Deacon, Miss Deborah Deacon. We were schoolfellows, you know.
Timidly approaching Mike with outstretched hand.
I am very glad to see you, Mr. Hanningford.
Thank you, miss. I'm very pleased to see you.
Luke, sitting right.
I suppose you hardly recognise our friend.
Watches her intently without her noticing it. Mike has turned away again and looks down, flicking leg with cane.
Well, he's certainly altered since we used to go to school together, but yes.
Examining his face.
There's something of the old face left, I think.
We only arrived from America last night, travelling hard all the time. Pretty near worked me to death. Dick has... But there, I suppose I should have hurried up pretty smart myself if I had been coming home to a fortune.
You are staying in the village, then, I suppose?
Yes, we've put up at Colonel Dexter's, my uncle's. A slow place. A bit better than the inn, apparently.
Oh, then you are the Miss Dexter's cousin that Alan was speaking of?
Oh, the young fellow that was there this afternoon. Was that Alan?
With a would-be playful laugh.
And who's Alan, then?
Alan is Mr. Rollitt.
Oh, I wish I'd known that this afternoon. Dick's been dying to see him and his mother all day. I wanted him to wait until the morning, but he would come down tonight.
Oh, I'm sure Alan and Aunt will both be delighted.
Approaching Mike, who still stands aside and looks down.
Won't you be seated, Mr. Hanningford?
He makes no sign.
Dick?
Mike still takes no notice. Luke has risen and crossed with assumed carelessness towards him, and now from opposite side of him to Deborah gives him a sharp kick. Mike starts and looks up. Luke, turning away carelessly.
Lost in reveries of old scenes, Dick, eh? Miss Deacon is asking you if you won't sit down.
Mike, sitting left centre.
Oh, I beg your pardon, miss, I'm sure. Oh, thank you, I will.
Deborah, going.
I shan't be a minute. They're only somewhere about the yard.
Exit Deborah, centre door left, downstage. Luke goes to door left, looks off, closes door, then goes up to door centre, looks off, then closes it. Comes right of Mike, who is left centre. Luke, after waiting an instant and making sure that no one is about...
Try and keep some of your wits about you, Mike, if you don't mind.
I don't see the darned good of this part of the trick, so I tell you.
I'm afraid we shall have a rough time if your memory doesn't improve. I've explained to you at least half a dozen times that it was as a sort of trial canter that I wanted to come here. If anyone in Devon can tell who is Dick Hanningford and who isn't, it will be these Rollitts. If you pass here, you pass anywhere.
Well, it's the very place I should have avoided, and for the same reason. The old woman knew Dick Hanningford as well as she knows her own son, and I'd rather avoid her.
You're bound to meet her sooner or later. Better get it over and know the worst, nor the best. 16 years make it a little difficult to tell a man, especially between the age of 9 and 25, and you'll like him enough, and always were.
And suppose she gets asking questions. Do I remember this? Do I remember that? You know what old women are.
Well, you can't be expected to remember all the details of your pinafore days after all this time, and knocking about as you have been. You know all that is necessary for you to know. You knew the old man, and you were in the house, and you knew young Hanningford. Besides, you didn't recollect anything yourself. You recollect what other people recollect. That's all you wanted to do.
Mike, rising.
I hope we don't make a mess of it.
Luke, crossing and laying his hand on Mike's shoulder, turns him to centre.
We shan't make a mess of it, don't you? You know what it's for. £100,000 apiece. I've done my share of the job. You do yours.
Turns right a little. Mike, turning round and facing him.
Are you sure you did your share?
What do you mean?
Are you sure he was dead?
Luke, after pausing, during which they have looked steadily at each other, turning away left.
Well, the bullet went in above his ear because I examined the wound. His body went over a 200-foot precipice. That I could also take an affidavit to, only I'd rather not.
Turning round and facing Mike again.
What makes you doubt it?
I don't know. Nothing. The idea occurred to me, that's all.
Don't you drink so much and you won't have so many ideas.
After a pause, during which he seems troubled, shaking it off with an effort.
Have you got the letters with you? It will look well to take them out casually while talking.
Sits on table. Mike, taking them out of his breast pocket and holding them in his hand.
Yes, here they are, all right. Bah!
With a shudder.
I always see his face when I look on the darn things.
Mrs. Rollitt, without.
Dick Hanningford! Dick Hanningford, my boy!
Mike drops suddenly in sitting posture on sofa left.
Ah!
Luke works round at back and drops down left. Enter Mrs. Rollitt excitedly, followed at a little distance by Alan and Deborah from centre. Alan and Deborah remain up, Rachel from door down left. Mrs. Rollitt, coming down towards Mike.
What, Dick, my boy, where be thee?
Sees Mike on sofa, making towards him.
Ah, there thee be. I thought I'd know thee again, though thee were only knickerbockers when I last saw ye. Tain't thy fault thy father were a bit stingy. Come and give us a hug, lad. Lord love us.
She is just in front of him, begins to speak in a bewildered, hesitating manner, in tones gradually dying away to an awed whisper, as she slowly, step by step, backs from him.
How you've grown, Dick Hanningford. What?
Stands staring at him. A strange, awed silence prevails. Deborah, advancing.
Aunt.
Mrs. Rollitt, motioning her back with her arm, but not turning.
Keep back, child. Don't come near.
Luke is near Mike, down centre. Alan, springing forward.
Mother, what's the matter?
The man's dead.
Luke, stepping forward.
Dead?
Mr. Purtwee, who has entered centre, followed by Ichabod and Rachel, left. He goes quietly up to Mike and lays his hand on his heart and bends over him earnestly, and it is a few seconds before he speaks.
Heart disease, I suppose. My letter in his hand. It's an ill wind that blows nobody any good.
Turns and feels Mike's heart once again, then quietly turns away to Alan.
He stood between you and £200,000. You are now old Hanningford's heir.
I?
Alan!
Luke, to corpse of Mike, aside as he crosses to back.
Bless you.
Medium curtain. End of Act 1. Act 2 of Woodbarrow Farm by Jerome K. Jerome. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Act 2. Scene. Morning room in a handsome flat. A showily furnished room, rather ostentatious and loud in its decoration and appointments. Large table in bay window, right upper corner. Fireplace right. Doors at back left centre and 2 in left wing. Small tables, right and left. Easy chairs, left and right. Breakfast is laid on a large table. It is a gorgeously laid meal, silver and plate in profusion, and a great number of dishes, tea-urn and coffee-urn, a boiling kettle, flowers and ferns in vases and stands. One, a large wavy one, is at left edge of table, close to Alan. The table, in short, is crowded and showy to the last degree. A magnificent footman in gorgeous livery is standing behind, and Mr. Piffin, in solemn black, waits close to Alan's chair, a dish in his hand. Alan is discovered sitting left of table and eating his breakfast in a most melancholy fashion. He looks intensely miserable and awed. The terrible solemnity of the whole affair has depressed his spirits to their lowest ebb. He glances nervously now and then as the meal proceeds, from the footman to the valet and vice versa, as they silently and with much ceremony walk about and wait on him. The fern by his side keeps getting in his way, tickling and irritating him, but he dare not move it. He eats in silence, and when he does speak, does so in a humble, deprecating, nervous manner. He is dressed in a loose morning costume. Music to open act. Piffin, standing by Alan's left elbow, centre, Peters, right of table, right.
May I get you a little pâté de foie gras, sir?
Alan, looking round.
I beg pardon?
A little pâté de foie gras, sir.
Patty who?
Goose's liver, sir. I think you will like it.
No, thanks. I never eats liver. It don't agree with me. I will have a bit o' the bacon, though.
No, sir. It is not dressed that way, sir. I would get used to it if I were you, sir. You will so often come across it. Peters, just pass your master the pâté de foie gras.
Peters goes to do so. Alan, who has just turned again towards his breakfast, is about to take up some gravy from his plate with his knife. Piffin checks him.
I wouldn't lap up the gravy with my knife, sir, I don't think. It's never done now in good society, sir.
It's the best part of it, you know. I always thinks, the gravy.
Yes, it's very tasty, sir. It's unfortunate it's so sloppy, and, you see, sir, eating it in that way does not show off the figure to advantage. Peters, remove your master's plate.
Peters does so, placing it a few feet beyond Alan's left hand. Alan watches it with jealous eyes. Peters then holds up the pâté de foie gras to Alan. He slowly runs his eye up Peters with awe, then looks at the pâté de foie gras, then, using one hand, attempts to take it. Peters, not moving a muscle, holds it tight. Alan seems surprised, and, partly rising, attempts to take it with both hands. Piffin, coming to his rescue, cutting a piece and putting it on his plate.
Allow me, sir. Peters, the brown bread and butter.
Peters, looking for it.
It is not on the table, sir.
No brown bread and butter? Dear me, how remiss.
Crosses left and rings bell. Peters also crosses left centre door. Alan looks cautiously around and sees they are not watching him, and stealthily reaches over and secures a knifeful of gravy. He is about having a second, and has the knife close to his mouth, when he becomes aware that Piffin has returned and is watching him. He tries to hide the knife out of sight. Peters has returned with bread and butter.
Peters, remove your master's knife. Don't you see that it is in his way?
Peters does so, and then holds the bread and butter to Alan, who takes a thin slice, folds it up and holds it in his left hand, while taking the pâté on a fork in his right. He first puts the pâté and then the bread and butter into his mouth and swallows them.
I must apologize for serving you your breakfast in here, sir. Of course, you will not have it in the drawing-room as a rule.
No, of course not. No, us always used to have it in the kitchen at home.
Yes, sir. Must have been very convenient. But I think I'll get you to put up with the breakfast parlour in future, sir, when the room's ready. Have you quite finished, sir?
I think I'd like a little more of that pie.
Looking longingly at pie at the other side of table.
You see, I always were a hearty eater.
Yes, sir. I'm delighted to hear it, sir. But I wouldn't eat any more breakfast, sir. You will find it is considered correct among bon vivants to eat a very sparse déjeuner. My late lamented master, the Count of Frisiani, never partook of anything but a cup of weak tea and a little dry toast, and he was one of the oldest families in Europe.
Alan rises. Peters bows as he does so, and Alan returns the bow and comes down right.
Ah, I shouldn't have thought as anyone could have lived long on that.
He bows.
No necessity to bow, sir.
He did it.
Indicating Peters.
He's paid for it.
I always seem to want a good feed myself in the morning.
Takes out an old clay pipe and prepares to fill it. Goes down right and sits in chair. Peters is clearing away the breakfast things.
Are you thinking of smoking, sir?
Yes, I always has a whiff or two arter breakfast.
It's very soothing, sir. My late lamented master, the Count of Frisiani, used to follow precisely the same course. But I wouldn't smoke a pipe, sir. Pipes are going out in good society.
Takes cigarette case from pocket and offers it to Alan. Takes pipe from Alan and puts it on a corner of table, right centre.
I have some cigarettes here, sir, which I think you will like, sir. These are much more comme il fait, sir. This case is a present from my late lamented master, the Count.
Alan looks at them and gingerly takes one.
Which end?
Piffin, lighting match.
Either end, sir. Allow me.
Showing matchbox.
Another little souvenir from my late master. He was always acknowledging, if I may say so, my value to him. That sort of thing is always done in good society now.
Light cigarette.
It is a full-flavoured one, sir.
Piffin takes Alan's pipe from table right centre, crossing with it to window right. Alan, watching him anxiously.
Oh, don't hurt him.
Piffin, turning round.
I was just going to put it outside the window sill, sir.
No, don't put him there. We used to sit up together of a night watching the sheep. I don't like the thought of putting him outside the window. Now I'm a gentleman. Drop him in the pocket of that old shooting coat of mine that thee won't let me wear. They know each other.
Sits right and smokes his cigarette. Piffin puts the pipe on table and returns right centre. Piffin, noticing that Alan is looking at his cigarette.
All right, sir?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Puffin.
Piffin, sir.
I were looking to see if it were a light, that's all.
You will soon get to like them, sir. And whenever you are ready to dress, sir.
Dress? Why, I be dressed, bain't I?
Oh, only for breakfast, you see, sir. I understood you were going out walking, sir.
Why can't I walk in these?
Oh, no, sir. All London would laugh at you.
Lord, I should never have thought as they'd take so much notice.
Rising.
Well, I'll dress. I don't want to upset London if I can help it. I'll dress.
Exit left. Bows to Piffin as Piffin does so to him.
No necessity to bow, sir.
Aside.
I've got a big job on here.
Exit Piffin, following Alan left. Piffin immediately returns, having forgotten the pipe, which he takes. He is recrossing left as enter Dexter and Clara centre, preceded by Peters, who takes tray from table right centre and exits up left.
And I've got to live in the house with this.
Dexter, coming down.
Good morning, Piffin, good morning. Having a quiet whiff?
Thank you, sir. My stomach does not permit my indulging in the luxury of a cutty pipe.
Is Mr. Rollitt about?
He has just this minute gone upstairs to dress, sir. I will let him know you are here, sir.
No hurry at all, Piffin. We are before our time. You are not looking well, Piffin.
Anxiety, sir. May be anxiety. You see, Mr. Rollitt's unacquaintance with the manners of the Beaux-Esprits throws much responsibility on myself.
You must be careful, Piffin. What would he do without you?
Piffin, smiling.
Well, I'm afraid he would be a little up a tree, sir, if I may be permitted a vulgarism.
Moving to door left.
I will go and acquaint him with your arrival, sir.
Takes plate from table left and puts pipe on it.
I'll send him to you directly, sir.
Smells pipe.
Shag.
Exit lower left.
Thank you, Mr. Piffin, thank you. Always be affable with your inferiors. Never know when you may want 'em.
Clara, by window, looking out.
Do you come across many of that sort?
Comes down right of table right.
Ah, you beast, you vixen. I wonder you don't cut yourself with that tongue of yours.
Clara, turning round with a hard laugh. At fireplace, right.
You must be pretty sharp if it goes through your skin.
Ah, you damn...
Enter Alan, left. He has on slippers and a smoking coat.
Don't he look at us too closely. He ain't properly dressed yet.
Clara, right centre, turns head away.
I don't think we'd had better look at you at all under those circumstances, Mr. Rollitt.
Laughs.
Oh, I'd be covered up all right everywhere. I'm merely a man as wasn't up to fashion plate standard.
Crossing centre.
And how be Colonel Dexter?
Shaking hands.
And jolly, my boy. And how's yourself?
Oh, I be spry enough.
Crossing before him and shaking hands with Clara, and keeping her hand.
I think us'll have a pleasant day.
Clara, right, looking tenderly at him.
I'm sure we shall.
Crosses to sofa, stands at head of it.
Well, you young folk will, I know, and the old folks will be happy looking on.
Sitting and taking Clara's hand in his and fondling it.
To see his little girl happy, that's always happiness enough for old Jack Dexter.
Clara, leaning over and kissing the top of his hand.
Silly old dad.
Dexter, taking out his handkerchief and pretending to weep.
Ah, like her mother, like her mother.
Her mother must have been rare beautiful, mustn't her?
Dexter, centre, rising and taking Alan by the hand.
Thank you. Ah, Mr. Rollitt, you have never known the blessing of a wife?
Clara looks at him.
Do you not understand the feelings of a widower?
Weeping.
No, but... but I hopes to one day... No, I don't mean that. Have thee had breakfast?
Yes, thank you, Alan, my boy.
I'll have another.
No, thanks, not today.
What's the matter? Off thee feed?
No, my lad, but we old folk ain't like you young country ones. Nothing at present, thank you.
Pauses.
To eat?
Have something to drink.
Both men laugh, each in his own distinctive way. Dexter turns left and catches Clara's face.
There be some rare old whiskey in the library. Thee'll find it on the sideboard.
Dexter goes up centre.
And it'd be more comfortable like in there than here. I'll just go and finish making myself beautiful.
Crosses to left.
Don't be too long.
Dexter has his back to them. Wine business at table right centre.
Oh, no, it oughtn't take me long to do that, ought it?
Goes to left door downstage, laughs, and then to Clara, as he is going.
I am not likely to stop upstairs long when I know these downstairs.
Go away, go away.
Exit Alan, downstage left. Business. She kisses her hand.
And I suppose you will go and throw this chance away, like you have every other.
Well, what if I do?
What if you do? What are we to live on?
Goes to Clara, left.
Goals, I suppose, as we always have done.
Yes, and is it a pleasant living? Is it pleasant to have to slave and trick for every dinner? Is it pleasant to be kicked sooner or later out of every society one goes into? Was it pleasant to be buried for 2 years in that God-forsaken hole by Exmoor, not daring to show our heads above ground for a moment? You've got a fine chance of being respectable now.
Too late, I'm afraid, though.
Too late?
Yes. You see, Papa dear, you haven't exactly brought me up in that way, and I'm afraid I'm too old to learn now. I don't think I should be quite at home as the wife of a piously brought-up young man from the country.
Leans back, laughs.
And so you're going to let 6,000 a year slip through your fingers? It's wicked, it's wicked.
Clara rises.
Well, it hasn't slipped through my fingers just at present. It is sticking to them pretty freely.
Toys with ring.
And how long do you think he will stand you playing with him?
Oh, a good long while yet.
Dexter puts hat on table.
That's just where you're making a mistake then. He's not a fool. He'll want an answer, yes or no, soon. And what are you going to say then?
Clara, looking out of window.
No.
Looking into fireplace right. Dexter, after a pause.
Luke Cranbourne's at the bottom of this. What devil's game is it that's going on between you and him?
I do wish you wouldn't drink when you're coming out anywhere. It always makes you so noisy.
Take care, Clara. You seem to forget I'm your father.
The relationship was none of my seeking. Whatever responsibility attaches to the unfortunate occurrence is not mine.
Dexter, making movement as if to strike her.
Clara?
Clara, facing him with quiet contempt. A pause.
Put down your hands, father. That period of my life is over.
Dexter steps back, then throws himself into chair, leans his head on his arms, and bursts into tears. Dexter, crying.
My own child hates me.
Clara, crossing and laying a hand on his shoulder gently.
I don't mean to be hard, father, but you can't expect much love and duty from me. Curses and blows were all you ever gave me as a child, and ever since I became a woman, you have merely hawked me about as your decoy.
Dexter, whimpering.
I only want to do what's for your own good.
Clara turns away left.
Yes, but you must allow me to be the judge of that. And come, you haven't had much cause to grumble up to now. You've been able to be drunk every night for the last 3 months.
Dexter rises centre.
I ain't been drunk.
Takes hat off table.
Not for you, perhaps. Drunk in the ordinary sense of the word. And I will get you something today if I can.
Dexter, drying his eyes.
God bless you, Clara. You're a good girl. Do you think you'll be able to get a 20?
You must leave it to me. I'll get you as much as I can.
Alan, off left.
Thank you, Mr. Puffin.
Piffin, off left.
Piffin, sir.
Clara, moving away towards door.
Come into the next room now. Here's Alan coming back.
Dexter, as he follows her out.
Say what you want to help a poor woman who's very ill and has been ordered nourishing food and...
Gags. Exeunt Clara and Dexter, upper left. Enter Alan and Piffin, left. Alan is completely dressed in the height of walking costume and is evidently very uncomfortable. Enter Peters, centre. Peters puts photo case on table, right centre. Exits down centre. Alan has on hat and coat, and Piffin is carrying his umbrella and gloves. Alan should be got up in a slightly exaggerated masher style. He is smoking a cigarette.
I can't breathe, Mr. Puffin.
Oh, you will soon get used to that, sir. And would you please to remember my name is Piffin, sir?
Taking his hand.
Why, surely these are 9s, sir. I think we could get them down to 8.5, and if I were you, sir, I would show a little more cuff, sir. It's always done in good society, sir. Besides, it makes the hand look smaller. A little cuff, sir, goes a long way in good society.
Thank you, Mr. Piffin.
Shakes his hand.
Thank you, sir, but I don't think you ought to shake hands with me, sir. And when you do shake hands with your friends, sir, allow me.
Takes Alan's hand.
Shake high, sir.
Shakes his hand high.
You'll see it's always done in good society, sir. Lord Carmichael's man told me he met you yesterday, sir.
I don't know him, do I?
Oh, no, sir, but he knows you, sir, and he was rather complaining of your walk, sir.
Why, what's it got to do with him?
Well, sir, knowing as I'm your coach, sir, he meant it as a friendly hint. You have rather a countrified walk, if you will forgive me for saying so. A more neglige style is adopted by the savoir vivre now, sir, and a more insouciant manner of carrying the umbrella. You walk too much in this way, sir.
Taking up umbrella, gags and imitates.
Lord love us, do I walk like that?
And just like that, sir. You see yourself, sir, what a very undistinguished appearance it presents. The present fashionable style is more like this, sir.
Performing an exaggerated Piccadilly dawdle.
See, sir, body a little forward, knees stiff, and a slight wobble, sir, a very slight.
Handing Alan the umbrella.
Perhaps, sir, you would take the umbrella and try it, sir.
Alan attempts the business, crosses to right. Piffin, criticising Alan's practice.
A little more bend, sir. A little wobble, sir. Umbrella held lightly between the first and second fingers, sir.
Alan goes left.
And if you could manage, allow me, sir.
Takes umbrella, shows him, and returns it.
To swing it right round now and then, sir. It adds great aplomb.
Great what?
French, sir.
Alan swings umbrella round awkwardly.
Like that?
Not quite like that, sir. A little more airily, sir.
Alan swinging it.
Does it ever put anybody's eye out behind?
I don't think that point is considered of much importance in good society, sir. Oh, that is much better, sir. If you would practice like that a little every day, sir, you would soon pick it up, sir. A little more bend, sir, and, don't forget the wobble.
Exit left downstage. Alan goes on practising to himself, making as much fun as possible, consistent with comedy, out of the business. As he is in the middle of it, enter Mrs. Rollitt and Deborah, door centre, the door being opened for them by Peters. They stand centre, staring aghast at Alan, who continues unconscious of their presence. Alan gags.
I'll soon pick it up. Strikes me someone will have to pick me up. It puts me in mind of one of our old turkey cocks.
Mrs. Rollitt and Deborah come down stage a little. Alan, business in right corner of stage. Peters withdraws, grinning. Deborah, after a long pause, clapping her hands.
I know what it is, Aunt. It's our Alan.
Alan, seeing them.
Mother!
My boy!
They rush into each other's arms, centre, and Mrs. Rollitt gives him a huge hug, gets right of Alan, Deborah left. Then he and Deborah have an embrace, then he and Mrs. Rollitt for the second time. Alan, in the middle of Mrs. Rollitt's second hug.
Hold hard.
What's the matter, lad?
Summat's gone.
What?
I don't know. Somewhat behind.
Drawing back right and looking down at himself.
Mother, you've spoilt me.
Ah, they used to tell me I allus did that, lad.
Deborah, after gazing in silent admiration at Alan.
Oh, Aunt, isn't it lovely? Look at its hat.
Mrs. Rollitt, critically examining his clothes.
Ah, and there's some good stuff there, too.
Moving away. Deborah going near and sniffing.
Oh, doesn't it smell nice? And, oh, look at its collar.
Alan, pleased, begins to plume himself. Deborah begins to laugh.
What's the matter with the collar? What are you laughing at?
Trying to look at his own collar. Deborah's laugh only grows, and Alan's indignation begins to rise.
What's the matter? What are you laughing at?
Deborah, laughing more and more, goes to walk round him. Turning round so as to face her, his collar prevents him from turning his head, and he has to walk round.
What are you up to?
I want to see it all around.
Well then, you can't do it. I ain't a show. What are you laughing at? There's nothing to laugh at.
Mrs. Rollitt laughs first time.
It's your ignorance, because you don't understand things. What are you laughing at?
Mrs. Rollitt, who has hitherto sat right looking on, now also begins to laugh, and she and Deborah go on laughing more and more, Alan growing more and more indignant.
I am surprised at you, Mother. Deb always was a...
The two women only laugh louder, and Alan, in spite of himself, begins to laugh too. Afterwards he joins in heartily, and all three laugh, after which they have another hug. Business. Mrs. Rollitt, exhausted.
Well, lad, and now dost thee like being a gentleman?
Well, it's got its drawbacks, Mother. There's more work about it than you'd think for, you know? But I think I shall be all right. I've got a good man learning me. He were teaching me to walk this morning. That was the park stroll I were practicing when you came in. See, Mother?
Imitates stroll.
Ah, well, hast made a good man of ye down in Devon. I hopes they don't spoil ye, lad, in turning thee into a gentleman.
Ah, no, Mother. It's only a polishing up the outside. I'm old Exmoor Oak.
Puts his hat and umbrella on table, right centre.
I hope, right through, and they can't hurt that. When did you come up?
Sits right centre.
Only yesterday, and us went to Mrs. Clouter's and slept, and then us come on here this morning.
And how long can you stop?
Well, us must start off tomorrow sometime.
Tomorrow? Oh, nonsense, Mother.
Nonsense? Why, bless the lad, thee wouldn't have me away on Saturday. Why, who'd pay the wages and see to everything?
Why, there's Rogers there, ain't there?
Ah, why, thee might just as well leave the key of the stable in charge of the old bay mare as trust him to look after anything, except his own inside.
Alan, after a pause,
Mother!
Rises, goes up to Mrs. Rollitt, right.
What do you want to go back at all for, and work and worry yourself to death? Let me take a little house up here in London for thee and Deb, and then we can all be together.
And leave the farm?
Deborah, turning round.
Oh, Alan.
Why not? You worked hard enough, Mother. Give the farm up and enjoy yourself.
Enjoy myself? Away from Woodbarrow Farm? Why, lad, thy father were born there and brought me home there, and he died there, and thee were born there, and there be the pigs and the poultry.
Begins to cry. Alan tenderly patting her.
All right, Mother, all right. Us'll keep it on.
Mrs. Rollitt, wiping her eyes.
And thee might want to come back to it theeself some day, lad.
Alan, laughing.
Why, thee don't think I'm going to run through 200,000, do you, Mother? We Devonshire lads win fortunes, not lose 'em.
Ah, no, lad. But thee knows the saying, roses blossom for a day, but stout old ivy's green alway. Thee ain't likely to lose the money if thee can help it, lad, but us all be in God's hands, and I'll be easier in my mind if the farm's there for thee to come home to. If anything happens, thee knows the way across the moor, and thee knows how the latch goes, and me and the lass will be inside to welcome thee.
Alan goes left, takes Deborah's hand.
Ah, I know you will, Mother. Both of you.
Music, piano.
Leastways I shall, and the lass until her gets married, I suppose.
Deborah goes up a little, gets right.
Until her gets married?
Deborah goes to Mrs. Rollitt, right, tries to stop her speaking.
Ah, the lads ain't all fools.
I never seem to think o' Deb's getting married somehow.
Well, other folks have.
I can't fancy the old farm without Deb. Lord, how lonesome it would be.
Deborah, who has been trying to stop Mrs. Rollitt, has come down and stands by her aunt, left.
Oh, it's only Aunt's fun.
Goes to Alan, left centre.
I'm not going to get married. Sure, the pigs and cows are worried enough with their foolish ways. I don't want any husband.
Ah, thee will some day, of course, and when thee does, we must make thee comfortable, lass.
Taking her hand.
Thee shalt have the best farm in all the country, and the best dairy, and the best stock.
Thank thee, Alan, dear.
Turns up stage. Mrs. Rollitt, rising. Music dies away.
Well, lass, I suppose us had better have a clean down and summat to eat, and then see about our bit of shopping.
Lord help us, if I ain't forgot all about 'em.
All about whom?
Why, Clara, Miss Dexter, and her father. They be in the library waiting for me.
Oh, don't let us keep you from them.
Oh, I shan't go out this morning now.
Gets hat and umbrella from table, right centre.
I shall get them to stop here instead, and us can have a nice quiet day all together.
Going towards door, lower left.
Come on, Mother.
Crosses to centre.
I've got a room fitted up a purpose for thee and Deb, with a roost just outside the window with a cock and 3 hens in it, and he crows all night.
Exeunt Alan, Deborah, and Mrs. Rollitt downstage. Enter Baron Von Schnorr, 1, and the Honourable Tom Gussett, 2, ushered in by Peters, centre, 3. Enter Luke, centre, and Dexter, upper left, 4, afterwards Clara, 5. Baron goes down left, Gussett right, Luke right centre, Dexter left centre. Dexter left.
Rollitt's going out. You can't see him. It's no good your coming here to try and fleece him this morning. I tell you he's going out.
Luke coming down right centre.
Yeah, we'll wait and say goodbye to him, Jack.
Baron left centre.
Ah, greedy Jack. You want the bird all to yourself. Nein. Then there like. Herr Cranbourne have a wing. Tom Gussett, he have the other wing. You and your fair daughter have the legs, and I will have the breast.
No, you shall have the bones after we're done with them. Make 'em into a stew. Keep a German baron for a week.
Others laugh.
Ah, tricky you here.
Motioning towards Clara and her father.
Ah, the early birds.
Yes, we have to be.
Rises and goes right, imitating him.
The worms get up so early nowadays.
Enter Alan, lower left. Baron goes to meet him. Gussett puts him away and he turns up centre. Speaks to Dexter.
Hello. Unexpected pleasure.
Luke comes forward and greets Alan centre. Gussett, right.
Haven't seen you for an age, dear boy.
No.
Goes to Luke, right.
I've been keeping pretty respectable of late. I mean, you know, I haven't been going out much.
Tom and I are going over to Paris for the Vincennes meeting. We've come to see if you will join.
Yes, do come. Then we can show you about Paris a bit, you know.
Ah, yes, and we shall be able to get you into one or two things in the betting line if you are with us. We can introduce you to some friends of ours.
Ah, be very kind of thee, I'm sure.
They go on talking, right. Baron, aside to the Dexters, back of Clara.
I say, Jack, my boy, how long have you been colonel? I did not know you was a militaire.
Papa joined the Salvation Army around the same time that you were raised to the German peerage. Don't talk so loud, my dear Baron.
Good.
Luke sits downstage right with back to audience, looking at betting book. Gussett to Alan right.
Of course, we shall take care of your interests as if it was for ourselves.
Baron comes and puts arm in Alan's.
Of course they will take care of your interests for themselves. Come here. You know I have been thinking about you so much of late, yeah.
Ah, very kind of thee, I'm sure.
Yeah, I say to myself, my friend Rollitt, I always call you my friend Rollitt, I say he is a good fellow. He has money, all he wants is family. He must marry family.
Gussett goes to Dexter, left centre. Dexter goes centre and tries to hear conversation. Baron notices it and crosses right with Alan.
Now, Miss Dexter, she is a nice girl, such a nice girl, but she has no family.
No, not yet.
Luke gets near fireplace right. Baron right, seeing it after a while.
Ah, nine. I do not mean what you mean. I mean family the other way, backwards, dead uns.
Oh.
Yeah, now there is my niece. Look at her family, look at her ancestors, all barons, German barons. And she is such a nice girl, so beautiful, so plump. Ach, I will introduce her to you. She will mash you so much, she...
Enter Mrs. Rollitt, Deborah behind her, lower left door. Seeing the room full, she stands by door, hesitatingly. Gussett coming down and interrupting with a sneering laugh.
Your nurse, Rollitt, I think.
Alan turns and sees them, then goes towards them.
Yes, Mr. Gussett, the best nurse a man can have. My mother.
Gussett, confused, but soon recovers himself and laughs it off. Colonel Dexter, Luke and Clara come forward to greet Mrs. Rollitt and Deborah, left centre, and the customary ceremony, etc., is gone through, all speaking together. Clara, smiling pleasantly, shakes hands with Mrs. Rollitt.
Good morning, Mrs. Rollitt. You're looking so well and jolly.
To Deborah.
How are you, my dear?
Between these two the greeting is really strained and awkward, although outwardly pleasant enough. Clara kisses Deborah, but Deborah seems to shrink. She turns away. Clara notices this and follows Deborah as she turns away up centre with a meaning look. While it has been going on, the greeting between Mrs. Rollitt and Luke has taken place. Mrs. Rollitt down left. Alan, Finishing his introduction of Mrs. Rollitt and Baron.
The Baron Von Schnorr. Mrs. Rollitt, my mother.
Your mother? Oh, impossible.
I beg your pardon, Mr. Snort?
Ach, ja, you're laughing at me, not your mother.
Yes, his mother. Don't you cast any of your nasty foreign insinuations upon me. I'm his lawful married mother, and his father was his father, and a better man never lived as anyone in Exmoor.
It's all right, mother. The Baron only means it complimentary. Thee's supposed to look too young to be anybody's mother. He has to take thee for my sister.
Laughing. Goes up left centre with Dexter.
Yeah, I take you for his sister. Ach, you English ladies, you never seem to get more old. You only get more round, more jolly.
Ah, foolishness.
Ruffling her dress and sitting very stiff, left on sofa. Baron, sitting on sofa beside her.
It must be the climate keep you so moist.
Drawing closer.
I know a man. He lives in your Manchester and...
Goes on talking to Mrs. Rollitt, but is not heard. Alan goes up and joins Colonel Dexter up left centre and Clara. After a little while, Colonel Dexter appropriates him, leaving Clara a little to right of them unnoticed. Gussett continues talking to Deborah, Deborah evidently bored and anxious to get away, Gussett trying to be very agreeable. At this point, when all the others are occupied, Luke Wright beckons Clara to him, and she crosses. Their conversation is in eager undertones, and they watch to see no one is noticing them.
Have you got him to join yet?
No, he kicks against it.
If his name isn't down on the list of directors before Monday, I shall be arrested.
Can't you get away?
No, I'm watched night and day. If he joins, the company will float and it will be all right.
I shall be seeing him alone this morning. I will try again.
And keep to plain gold and diamonds for presents?
Touching her bracelet.
Those falal things are no good. Don't fetch 10% of their value.
Deborah, part of the conversation between herself and Gussett, abstractedly, her attention being fixed on Luke and Clara.
That was very funny.
Gussett right with Deborah, looks at her in amazement. Luke, downright.
There's that milkmaid watching us. Don't look around. Answer as though I had been proposing to you. That will account for our talking together. Is there no hope for me?
Clara, smiling.
None. Luke, please don't refer to the subject again. I like you, respect you, will be a sister to you, but love...
Luke, grinning.
Yes, it's that Rollitt that you love.
Deborah, followed by Gussett, has moved away to window.
Mr. Cranbourne, you have no right.
Luke, who has been watching Deborah.
Chuck it up. It's all right. She's gone to the window.
I don't suppose we've deceived her very much. She's a sharp little minx. Get these men away.
Clara takes up book and, standing, toys with it upright, front of right centre table.
She never leave her bed for 18 years. She take 3 doses, then she get up and go for a 3-mile walk.
Mrs. Rollitt, rising.
Lor, it must have been quite a change for her.
Baron, rising.
Yeah, it was a miracle.
Turning and seeing Luke beside him.
Ha! My dear boy, ready?
Luke crosses to Baron.
Ready and off.
Alan, coming down centre, followed by Dexter.
Oh, are you 3 going?
Yes, I know you'll be glad to be rid of us.
Well, I have.
Looking at watch.
1 or 2 little things to do this morning.
Well, look here, Alan. I'm just going to have a quiet weed in the smoking room till you're ready. See?
Oh, it be a billiard room now, thee know.
Oh, have you had a table put up?
Clara, who has just crossed over and joined the group left, to Mrs. Rollitt, who is just about quitting the room by door left lower.
Do you allow your little boy to play billiards, Mrs. Rollitt? I don't think I should if I had charge of him.
Oh, the more he's up to every sort of game that's played, the better for him, to my thinking.
Exit Mrs. Rollitt, left.
Oh, it keeps me at home out of mischief like. Come and have a look at it.
Baron, as they go.
Ach, billiards is a beautiful game.
Aside to Luke.
But you cannot win much at it. It takes so damn long.
Exeunt all but Gussett and Deborah left, all talking as they go. Gussett and Deborah near fireplace.
Well, I'm afraid, Mr. Gussett, I really must go now.
Goes down stage. Gussett, getting between her and the door left, to which she is backing.
Oh, no, don't go. Do you know, I shall really think you're trying to avoid me.
Deborah, retreating behind table. Gussett takes a step.
Oh, not at all.
Ah, so pleasant to hear you say so. You know, Miss Deacon, I so want you to like me.
Yes, well, I do very much. Only I can't stop to do it now, because you see, Aunt wants me.
Moves centre upstage. Gussett stops her. Business of Deborah trying to get away, and of Gussett cutting her off and trying to get near her, is kept up throughout the scene.
Ah, but your aunt sees so much of you, and I can see so little.
I'm afraid there's not very much more of me to see. I must go, really, because we have got to do some shopping this morning.
Ah, let me come with you.
Oh, no, I won't tax your kindness. I know you men hate shopping, and we are going into drapers and dressmakers and all sorts of dreadful places.
Ah, they will not be dreadful if you are there, Miss Deacon.
And Aunt always takes such a long time shopping. Never can make up her mind, and I'm worse still, and...
Makes movement. Gussett moves behind Settle and stops her down left.
Ah, the longer you take, the better I shall like it. I shall enjoy coming, I assure you.
Deborah, getting more and more cross, comes right centre.
Well, you know, I really don't think you will. And really, Mr. Gussett...
Ah, I know better. No, I quite insist upon coming.
Ah, all right, Mr. Gussett. You shall.
Crossing left, meets Mrs. Rollitt just entering left.
Aunt, I want you.
Turning her round again.
Why, whatever's the...
I'll tell you. Come along.
Exeunt Mrs. Rollitt and Deborah left. Gussett, right, turns and arranges his moustache in glass over chimney.
Might do worse, Gussie, my boy.
Turns round again.
She's not a bad little thing. Lick her into shape a bit.
Enter Luke, upper left. Luke crossing to table and taking up his hat.
Coming?
No, dear boy. Got a little job on.
Oh, on the warpath.
Yes. Well, I may as well keep it in hand. Chawbacon will make her good for 1,000 or 2, I expect, if nothing better turns up.
I wish you luck. She'll be a good match for you, I think, Gussie.
Exit Luke, centre. Enter Mrs. Rollitt and Deborah, lower door left. Both are wearing old-fashioned big country shawls and big bonnets. Deborah evidently has on one of her aunt's. Their dress altogether is extravagant, as comedy will permit, and has evidently been hastily put on. Deborah also carries a big country hand-basket covered with a cloth, the neck of a bottle sticking prominently out, and a huge gamp. Deborah smothering her laughter.
We are quite ready, Mr. Gussett.
Yes, we are quite ready.
Gussett, who has regarded them with a horrified stare.
Ah, yes. If you will wait a minute, I think I will call a cab.
Oh, we'd rather walk, thank you. You would rather walk, wouldn't you, Aunt?
Oh, I've made up my mind for a walk.
Yes, we would both rather walk. Will you give your arm to Auntie, Mr. Gussett?
Gussett crosses to centre.
And be very careful of her at the crossings, because she's rather nervous, and so am I.
Deborah, right centre, handing the basket to Gussett.
You won't mind carrying the basket, will you, Mr. Gussett? Because it's so heavy.
He takes it, bewildered and helpless. As Gussett, Deborah and Mrs. Rollitt reach door centre, enter Alan and Clara, left up entrance.
Hello, where be they off to?
Down Regent Street and up Piccadilly, I think you call it. Goodbye.
Exeunt Mrs. Rollitt, Deborah and Gussett, centre. Clara comes left.
I should like to be there to see the Honourable Tom Gussett at the crossings.
Here be a madcap. Her be, that girl. What makes thee so anxious that I should join the company?
Clara, sitting left on sofa. Alan stands by her, behind sofa, leaning over.
Why, don't you see? Poor Papa could be secretary if you joined. They would let you nominate him, and we should be so glad to be earning something. And we are so poor.
Laying her hand on him.
Do join, Alan, for my sake.
Alan, yielding, back of sofa.
Thee don't know how hard thee makes it for me to say no.
Then don't say it. It would make me so happy.
Looking up at him.
It would?
Clara, laying her hand as if unwittingly on his.
And I should think you.
Drooping her head.
I'd better not say what I should think you.
Well, lass, if you wish it, I will then.
You will, really?
Yes, if it will make thee happy, I will. And now let's talk about yourself.
Sits left next to Clara.
Thee is the company I most wants to join. How have thee been getting on?
Clara, looking down.
Oh dear.
What does oh dear mean?
Oh dear means very bad. Debts.
With assumed bewilderment.
Awful.
Alan, smiling.
What sort of debts?
Oh, all sorts. Tradespeople, you know, and all that, and then I thought I could win a little by betting.
Alan rises.
And put it all right. And I've been and lost. Oh dear.
I should have thought there were enough fools among us men trying to win money that way.
I am naughty, I know. But Papa leaves everything to me, and I get so frightened when I see the debts mounting up and nothing to meet them, and I've no one to advise me.
Alan, after a pause, rises, goes to Clara.
I didn't mean to speak unkind, lass. I'm full of old-fashioned notions about women, I suppose. I like 'em to be women, not mere men in petticoats. How much does thee owe?
Oh, heaps.
Handing him pocketbook.
Look.
Alan crosses to right and sits at table.
And I haven't any money.
Rising and looking over his shoulder, right, as he examines the book.
Do you think they'll put me in prison?
Oh, there ought to be taken in charge by somebody, that's certain.
Alan rises, puts some notes from his pocketbook into hers, and hands it back to her.
I owe your father a little over 1 or 2 bets. I can take it off that and give him the rest, like.
Clara takes book and lays it on the table. The notes drop out onto the table.
You are good, Alan, really.
Puts book on table right. Half to herself.
I wish sometimes that you weren't. That you were more like other men I have met.
Turning away right.
Why, would thee like me better?
No, but I should like myself better.
What do thee mean, lass?
Nothing. I'm not used to your sort of men.
Goes to fireplace then, upright, throwing off her seriousness and turning towards him.
You are like the knight, Alan, out of some old legend that comes and slays the dragon and sets the frightened princess free from all her trouble.
Alan goes to table right, Clara right centre at top of table.
When art thee going to give me the right to be thy knight always?
Clara sits at table playfully.
Ah, the gallant knights are apt to turn into grim jailers when they get the princess into their own castles.
Can't thee believe me, Clara? Trust me, lass. I'm only a rough country chap to be asking a beautiful lady like thee to be my wife. But if I can't give thee anything very showy on the outside, it will make me the more eager always to keep a loving heart for thee within.
Oh no, a lover on his knees is so much nicer than a lover on your arm. You're so nice, Alan, as you are. You can't think. I really couldn't bring myself to risk a change.
It would be a change for thee, Clara.
Leans on table at back of Clara, puts hand on Clara's chair.
From a rough and troubled road to one where every stone were smoothed away from your path, where every thorn were held back as you passed, where, instead of care for the day and dread for the morrow, thee would feel that a strong arm were around thee, that a loving hand were working out thy life for thee. Cannot thee risk the change, Clara?
Clara rises. Alan takes her right hand.
Ah, I suppose there are such lives for some women. It must be very good when you are tired. And you, Alan, women do not always seem so charming after marriage as they did before. It might be a risk for you.
To have the sweetest, noblest woman in the world to be my wife? I'll risk that.
Ah, you boys. You think all women are angels.
Well, so they are. A good woman is an angel.
Clara at fire, facing round and looking at him.
How do you know I am good?
A pause. Alan looks in surprise and inquiry at her, not knowing what to answer.
Hadn't you better make sure, Alan? What do you know of my past, of even my present, of whence I came, what I am? Suppose, Alan, suppose I were only an adventuress, a woman with the blood of sharpers and thieves in her veins, whose nursery was the gambling house, whose school was the cafe and the boulevards, a woman who earned her daily bread by shamelessness and cunning, a woman whose past would ever follow like a shadow the footsteps of her life, whose future must ever be a darker shadow still. Ah, Alan, take care. Cupid ties a bandage over men's eyes. Hymen, when it is too late, plucks it off. Hadn't you better lift a corner of the handkerchief, Alan, while we are yet upon the step without, lest beside your hearth, when the door has shut us in, you cast it loose, to find I am a stain upon your name, a shadow in your home, a blight upon your life? Alan, take care. Take care.
Alan, recovering from the bewilderment with which he has heard her.
Ah, it's well for thee that it is thee, and not anyone else, that talks like this about thee.
Ah, but Alan, try and find out a little more about me. It's just a whim of mine. I want to feel sure that you know me, just to please me.
If I couldn't trust thee...
Takes her hand.
Lass, I shouldn't love thee.
Ah, you are a good fellow, Alan, and I won't tease you any more. And you will join the company, won't you? And then you shall get me that dear little diamond bracelet that we looked at. Do you remember it? And you shall put it on yourself.
All this is said with every trick of fascination at her command, and now she playfully holds up her arm, from which the loose sleeve falls back, close to his face.
On that.
He drops on his knees and kisses her arm. Enter Deborah, centre. Clara snatches her arm away.
Deborah!
Alan rises, turning and seeing her, goes to fireplace right.
Hello. He's back soon.
Yes, Aunt met Mrs. Clowder just outside, so I pleaded a headache and left them.
Throwing off bonnet and shawl on chair and coming down.
Don't you think Colonel Dexter would like a game of billiards, Alan?
No, he's all right. He's smoking.
Oh, I'm sure he'd like a game.
Clara motions Alan away.
I want to have a chat with Miss Dexter. We shan't see each other after this morning for goodness knows how long.
Ah, I understand now.
Goes up stage left.
I'll go, and you can tell each other about your new frocks.
Exit Alan left. Deborah and Clara look at each other.
I came back to see you, Miss Dexter, before you left.
It was very good of you.
I want to know whether you are playing the fool with Alan, or whether you mean to marry him.
I have heard of that sort of question being put to a gentleman under certain circumstances.
It is put to the person who is supposed to be acting dishonorably. I put it to you.
I am afraid I have been mixing things up. I was under the impression that it was the stout lady, your aunt, that was Mr. Rollitt's mother.
You are very smart, Mrs. Dexter, and I am not. But this is no game. It is earnest.
Then I would suggest to you that your cousin is quite capable of taking care of himself.
Yes, against a man. But not against the woman he loves and trusts. It is his love that enables you to deceive him.
Clara sits on chair near table right.
You seem to have made up your mind, my dear child, that I am deceiving him.
I know that he has asked you to become his wife, and I know that although you have let him think it is all right, you have never given him a real answer. I know that you accept his intentions, his invitations, his presents.
Noticing the book and notes on the table, points to them.
And all the while, you are having whispered interviews and secret meetings with another man.
Clara coolly counting notes.
If you are thinking of the conversation you were trying to listen to just now...
That is only the latest of many such I have noticed. They began 3 months ago, down in Devonshire. I come to London and find the same thing going on.
You really ought to have been a detective. The force might have been some use then.
I'm not blind. Alan is. But that is not all. These things might be explained by themselves, suspicious though they are, but just now, going downstairs, I picked up a purse.
Pausing and looking at Clara, who, however, makes no sign.
It is your purse.
Throws it into Clara's lap.
I opened it to see whom it belonged to, and inside is a wedding ring. Is your name Dexter or Cranbourne?
I really must decline to answer any questions of yours. You are so exceedingly rude.
You need not answer me. Answer Alan. Tell him that you will be his wife, or that you cannot.
Clara takes no notice.
Do you refuse?
I refuse to be dictated to.
Then I shall communicate my suspicions to Alan.
Do so. Tell him that you believe that I am the wife of another man, and am playing a shameful part with him merely to sponge on him, that I am fondling him with the one hand only the better to pick his pocket with the other. Tell him that you believe he is surrounded by a gang of adventurers and thieves, of which I am the willing decoy. Tell him your suspicions, and I will tell them that they are the poisonous concoctions of a jealous woman, of a woman who loves him herself, and seeks to win him from her more favoured rival by lies and trickery.
You shall answer him for all that, or he shall know the reason why you dare not.
Crosses left and calls.
Alan! Alan!
Enter Alan left upstage.
Alan, is Miss Dexter engaged to be married to you, or not?
Well, blessed if I could tell her that, Deb. That be the very thing I've been trying to find out myself. Ain't it, Clara? Only her be such a tease.
You mean you have never been able to get a plain answer? Yes or no?
Gently, lass. Thee be mistaken this for some business of thine.
Alan, we've been like brother and sister all our lives, and your happiness is my happiness. I have my reasons, very strong reasons, for asking you to ask Miss Dexter now, before me, whether she will be your wife.
I can't say I thank thee, Deb, for interfering in a matter that don't concern thee.
To Clara, crossing to her.
I hope, Clara, you don't think as I've had any hand in this. But as things stand now, it will perhaps be best if I do ask thee. Will thee be my wife?
Clara crosses down,
Yes!
stepping forward and putting her hand in Alan's centre. A pause. She then, glancing first at Deborah, draws Alan slowly to her, and they kiss. They cross right.
I think now, Deb, that Miss Dexter has a right to know thy reasons.
They were mistaken ones, Alan. Please forgive me, both of you.
Exit Deborah left. Alan, bewildered, looks after Deborah.
What does it all mean?
I will tell you sometime. Never mind now.
Ah, well, us oughtn't to be angry with her, anyhow, for what her's done.
Takes Clara's hand in his.
Ought us?
Draws her to him and kisses her forehead. Clara, disengaging herself gently.
I am going to tell Papa. I am so happy.
Crosses left, looking back to him laughingly. Exit Clara, left upstage. Alan, centre, after a pause.
Everything I want in the whole wide world. And 3 months ago...
Breaks off and passes his hand over his eyes.
I wonder if I shall wake up in a minute in the old farm and find that the £200,000 and Claire have only been dreams.
Rising himself.
Ah, no, it be real enough.
Looks round.
Ah, they call fortune a fickle jade, but her's been a firm friend to me. I'll drink thee a bumper, fortune lass.
Turns to table right, on which there are wine and glasses, and pours out a glassful.
I don't know how much a bumper is, but I expects it's about a glassful, and thee shall have it.
Takes glass in his right hand and raises it.
Here's thy jolly good health, my lass, to Lady Fortune.
Enter Peters, centre upper door, with card on salver. Alan lowers glass untouched.
What's the matter?
Peters coming forward and presenting salver.
A gentleman to see you, sir.
Alan takes card, but does not look at it.
He'll have to be quick about it, then. Send him up.
Footman seems to hesitate.
Send him up. Send him up.
Exit Peters, centre.
Another of my swell friends, I suppose. They seem to be a swarming this.
Glances at card. His hand holding the glass sinks lower and lower. He gazes round, bewilderingly. Reads card in amazed tone.
Richard Hanningford. I saw him lying dead before my own eyes 3 months ago.
Enter Richard Hanningford, centre. Hanningford, at door, raising hat.
I beg your pardon?
The glass in Alan's hand overturns. Medium curtain. End of Act 2. Act 3 of Woodbarrow Farm by Jerome K. Jerome. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Act 3. Scene 1. The library at Alan's chambers. Fire left, doors right and centre. Table left centre. Big easy chair left by fire. Peters discovered left centre, arranging and cutting papers on table and whistling. Music to open. Enter Piffin, right.
Have you seen my cub about?
Peters, without looking up.
No, Foxy, I ain't. Didn't know as you had one.
You know who I mean. Your master.
Peters, going to door centre.
Not far off from where yours is, I suppose.
Exit Peters, centre.
The master has been getting impertinent to me of late, so the servants seem to be following suit.
Shrugging his shoulders.
I shall throw this job up when I've made another 100 or 2. I wonder how much longer he's going to keep me waiting.
Exit Piffin centre. Enter Alan Wright, creeping in cautiously in a mysterious and watchful manner. He has a huge pewter pot in one hand and a large churchwarden clay pipe alight in the other. He looks round stealthily, listens, then crosses nervously and sits left in easy-chair. He stretches himself out as luxuriously as his tight clothes will allow, especially the collar, takes a long pull at the pot and long puffs at the pipe. In the middle of each pull grunts, "Good," in evident enjoyment.
I've been done on this time. He's waiting upstairs to curl my hair. Told him I'd come up when I'd finished conducting my correspondence.
Pulls at pipe and takes a deep draught.
First time I've ever enjoyed myself since I came into my property.
Breaks out into some country alehouse sort of song, sings, warming as he goes on with great gusto. Near the end, enter Piffin centre, unseen by Alan. Piffin comes down and stands centre, looking on. Alan finishes song and then buries his face in the pot. As his eyes emerge over the brim, he catches sight of Piffin. He remains looking at him for a while, then slowly puts the pot on the table.
What do they want? Didn't I tell you I were going to conduct my correspondence, and that I didn't want to be disturbed?
I beg pardon, sir, but I thought maybe you had completed your correspondence, especially as there was only one letter this morning, and that was a circular about coals.
Oh, did you? Well, I ain't, you see. I'm going to write a lot of original correspondence this morning, and I'm collecting my thoughts.
Goes on smoking sulkily.
Yes, sir. Certainly, sir. But might I be allowed to suggest, sir, that a pot of ale and a clay pipe are hardly the dolce far niente of a grand signor?
Hardly the what of my which? Look here, don't you be so spry at calling me them jaw-breaking foreign names, 'cause I don't like it. It were only yesterday you alluded to me as a bomo, and last week you said I ought to be in the hot tongs. I didn't say anything at the time, but you drop it.
I referred to you as belonging to the beau monde, sir, and I may have said your position was now among the haut ton. We always talk like that in good society, sir. Both expressions were flattering, very flattering.
Ah, maybe they were, maybe they weren't. Next time you call it me in English, then I can judge for myself, and don't worrit me today at all. I've got a trying morning before me, and I'm going to have a little quiet enjoyment to set myself up before it begins.
Might I suggest then, sir, that a cigarette and a little absinthe would be more de rigueur? My late lamented master, the Count of Viziani, invariably took a little absinthe after breakfast, and found great benefit from it.
Yes, I know. I tried your friend's cough mixture before, you know. Old ale's good enough for me.
But, sir...
Don't you worrit. I've been a gentleman for a month. I think I might have a morning off.
Very well, sir. Just as you please, of course, sir. But I've got my character to consider, sir, and I am not accustomed to the service of gentlemen with pot-house proclivities.
Oh, go and hang yourself.
That's never done now, sir, in good society. My late lamented master, the Count of Viziani...
Alan, springing up, working Piffin round from table left to desk right.
Oh, you go to your late lamented master, the Fizzin' Count, and tell him to. I've had enough of him, and I've had enough of you. Blessed if I've had a happy moment since you came into the house. You've dressed me up like a tailor's dummy, and curled my hair like a Sunday school kid. You made me talk like a man in a play, and walk like a monkey on stilts. They've chivied me about from morning till night, and they've rammed that old lamented corpse of yours down my throat every 2 minutes of the day. I've put up with it all for a long while, because I thought they meant well, and were trying to make me into a gentleman. But blest if I think thee knows much more about the genuine article than I does. And I'm going to go it in my own way now. Look here.
Takes off his tie and collar and throws them down and jumps on them. Pulls off his coat and throws it in a corner. Ruffles his hair. Unbuttons and throws back his waistcoat, kicks off his boots and throws himself into easy-chair, sticks his feet on table, takes long pull from the pot, slams it on the table again, and commences to smoke his pipe vigorously, looking defiantly at Piffin.
That's the sort of man I'm going to be now.
Piffin, who has stood aghast, moving off.
Very well, sir. Then I have only to say that I wash my hands of you entirely. You can't make a gentleman out of a pig's ear.
Alan, puffing quietly at pipe.
No, it ain't the usual method.
Piffin by door centre, muttering to himself, but meant to be heard by Alan.
Only what I might have expected from mixing myself up with such canaille.
Alan takes no notice.
Pray understand, sir, I give you a week's warning on the spot. On my late master, the...
Alan, springing up and throwing book at him. Piffin exits right.
Yes.
Piffin again appears hurriedly at door right and cries,
Upstart, bumpkin.
And exits quickly.
I'll give you my toe on the spot if I hear any more of...
Reseats himself with a grunt of disgust. A pause, during which he smokes.
He is right. I weren't meant for a gentleman after all. Some of us was built for gaiters, and some on us for patent leather shoes, and I be one of the gaiter sort. All my tastes are low. I don't want to like claret, I don't want to like cigarettes. I'm uncomfortable with a collar.
Picking his up and fixing it.
I prefer shove halfpenny to billiards. I give a trifle to be going to spend this evening at the Dunkery Arms. I happen to sing a chorus with old Joe Steddles and young Jim Wally and Jack Clowder. He'd got a fine voice, had old Jack Clowder. Never heard a man sing so loud in all my life. Lord, I shall never forget her's doing Rock Me to Sleep, Mother, round at the lodge, and waking up Mother Hammond's 3 kids, just as her getting all off to sleep. Lord, how her let us have it. Us went home early that night. They comed back with me, old Jack and Jim, and Deb made us a veal pasty for supper.
Smiling.
Her do make good.
Enter Peters.
Mr. Purtwee.
Followed by Purtwee, door centre, takes Purtwee's hat and exits. Alan rises and commences to pick up his various articles of apparel and refix them while talking to Purtwee. Purtwee, coming forward.
Well, my boy.
It does me good to see thee again.
How are you?
Alan shakes hands.
Oh, I be all right outside. Bean't very spry inside, so I tell thee.
Explanatory of his dressing arrangements.
Just been having a quiet smoke, you know.
Purtwee, with a smile.
And do you always undress to smoke?
No, but I has to now when I wants to sit down comfortable.
Continues to dress. Brings wine down to table.
Have a glass of wine. I'm glad thee've come. I were afraid from thy letter that thee wouldn't.
Purtwee sits in armchair left.
Well, it's a very informal proceeding. I'm bound to say, not at all professional.
Perhaps not, but it's simple and straightforward like, and maybe that's as good. Have ye read the papers I sent thee?
Yes, most carefully. and they certainly make the story appear very plausible indeed. Have you said anything to your mother?
No, no. I thought I wouldn't say a word to anybody until I was sure one way or t'other.
Quite right, quite right. What sort of man was he?
Blest if I tell 'ee. I were that taken aback. I couldn't tell her what it were. But thee'll see him for theeself in a minute. I told Father Christmas to send him straight up when he comes.
Purtwee, looking at his watch.
Well, if he's an impostor, he'll hardly venture to come to a meeting of this kind.
Enter Peters.
Mr. Richard Hanningford.
Exit Peters.
Morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Motioning to Purtwee.
Mr. Purtwee, the gentleman I spoke of.
Good morning. Guess I'm not a particularly welcome visitor here.
Well, I owns as I've come across folks as I felt more at home with. But I suppose we've got to get used to 'ee.
Well, now, gentlemen, we've come for business, and must not waste time. Mr. Rollitt has told you who I am, and if you are Richard Hanningford, I shall be only too anxious for you to have your rights. But then, dear sir, I shall want to be very sure that you are Richard Hanningford.
That's right and square. I've got to prove it. I know, and I don't say that it will be an easy job.
At present, you see, we have nothing but your bare word for it. You say this man, who called himself Richard Hanningford, and who died at Mrs. Rollitt's, was an impostor.
And a damned scoundrel.
Quite so, if he were not Richard Hanningford. He must have been. But then, if he were Richard Hanningford...
Why then, I am the damned scoundrel.
Well, I wasn't going to say that, but one of you must be the right Hanningford, and the other the wrong one. And if we made a mistake 3 months ago, we don't want to make another now.
You see, it ain't so much the money I care about. There was a time that I thought it would be a grand thing to be rich. But now I've tried it, danged if I see so much fun in it as I thought there were. It ain't only that. It's the girl I love. If I lose the money, I loses her. I can't expect her to have me without it. She's a lady. I'm only a country bumpkin, and I know it. With this money I can win her and make her life happy, even if she doesn't much care for me. If I were sure you were Dick Hanningford, I'd give it up. But I ain't sure, and I'm going to fight. That's plain.
Plain and sensible, and I don't like you any the less for it. But I am Dick Hanningford, and the money's mine, and I'm going to have a good fight to get it.
Puts foot on chair.
You say this man who tried to, and as he thought did, murder you, had been a friend of yours.
Hanningford takes foot off chair.
He'd been my chum for over 2 years, the cur, and knew everything about me. I saved his life when the gang were going to hang him. He shared my diggings when we were in the mining lay, and he had half my blanket every night when we were with the cattle. And I trusted him, the skunk.
What was his name?
Cassidy. Dan Cassidy.
Sits again.
And then he murdered you, or tried to, as you say, took your papers from you, and came over here to impersonate you?
I suppose so.
He was uncommonly like you, too.
Like me? Not at all.
Oh, yes, my dear sir. I never saw him alive, but his features were yours, 1 for 1.
Dan Cassidy was no more like me than I'm like a coloured angel out of a picture book.
Purtwee and Ellen exchange glances.
Well, all I know is that if the man who called himself Richard Hanningford and who fell down dead in my mother's kitchen 3 months ago was standing beside you now, nobody would know which were you and which were him.
Hanningford, rising.
I don't know that man.
All rise and look at one another.
Then what has become of Dan Cassidy?
Into Peter's centre.
Mr. Luke Cranbourne is downstairs, sir, and would like to see you.
Oh, bother Luke Cranbourne. Tell him I'm out.
Yes, sir.
Going. As he is by door...
Stop.
Peters turns.
Ask Mr. Cranbourne to come back in a quarter of an hour.
Looks at watch.
Yes, sir.
Exits centre.
What sort of a man was Dan Cassidy?
A pale, dark-eyed man with a long black beard.
Would you know him again without the black beard and under another name?
Know him? Will you bring me face to face with him?
Maybe I will.
See here, I've lived among a set that likes to wipe off a score, no matter what the price. You put that man into my hands so that justice may be done on him, and we share the old man's money between us.
Is that a bargain?
You don't suspect...
Alan crosses to Purtwee.
Yes, I do. He's been no friend of mine. Is it a bargain?
Yes. Without Dan Cassidy, my case might be hard to prove. With him, it would be easy. £100,000 and my revenge are good enough for me. You give me that.
Goes to extreme right. Enter Dexter from door centre. He draws back on seeing strangers and stands right centre.
Beg pardon, my dear boy. Found the door open.
Alan goes up centre to Dexter.
And took the liberty of an old friend to walk in. Thought I should find you alone.
Shall be in a minute, Colonel, if you'll excuse me.
Draws the two men together near fireplace. Alan nearest, Purtwee next, Hanningford right.
Can they play billiards?
I can, but I don't crave for them at this particular moment.
You'll just have time to play 50 up before the man as I takes to be Dan Cassidy is here.
How will you let us know?
Alan looks round, thinking, then catches sight of glasses on table left. Takes one up and holds it over hearth.
Keep the ears open, and when thee hears this glass fall and break, open the door and come in.
All go up centre, speaking low. Exit Purtwee and Hanningford. Alan, returning centre.
Well, Colonel Dexter, what do thee want? Glad to see thee, thee know?
Nothing, dear boy, nothing for myself. I have only brought a letter from my little girl, and am to take back an answer.
Produces letter and hands to Alan.
I'm only Cupid to you young folks, ha-ha, only Cupid.
Ah, they usen't to wrap 'em up so much when I were young.
Crosses right, opens and reads letter. Dexter, who is very much wrapped and buttoned up, laughs with much ostentation.
Ha-ha, very good, very good. We really must bring you out more, Alan. Ha-ha-ha.
Alan, who has sat right in front of desk, reading.
My darling Popsy Wopsy.
Looks up puzzled and round at Dexter. Aside.
That ain't Clara's usual style.
Reads.
I am so terribly sorry to worry my own darling boy, but I am in such fearful trouble. I want £100 to pay some debts owing to a wicked man having cheated us. Would my own darling lend it to his broken-hearted little blossom, and don't say anything to me afterwards until I pay you back, as I shall be so ashamed of it. I send Papa with this. He knows nothing about it, so please don't tell him. He is so proud.
Alan looks at Dexter, who turns away and tries to assume airy unconsciousness. Alan reads.
And would he be so angry with me, but you are the only friend I have? Oh, my darling, do let me have the money, or I shall go mad. A million kisses to my own sweet, precious hubby-dubby from his ever-loving little birdie, Clara. P.S. Please don't cross the check.
Alan takes cheque-book from desk and begins to write.
Was Clara ill when she wrote this?
Dexter, who was sitting at table left centre, having wine.
No, my dear boy, oh, no.
Oh, because the writing seems a bit shaky-like, and the letter so funny. Thought maybe she were a bit queer.
Oh, yes. She was a little queer, very shaky indeed, and she seemed very much worried too. She wouldn't tell me what about. She tries to keep all her troubles away from her old father, dear child.
Enter Clara, unseen by either.
Ah, I know how anxiously she's waiting for me now. Come back soon, dear, dear papa, she said, and bring it with you.
Alan, having put the cheque in an envelope, rises and crosses and holds it to Dexter. Clara steps forward and takes it.
Thank you.
Miss Dexter.
Clara?
This letter is addressed to me, I believe.
Opens it and takes out the cheque, which she returns to Alan.
It's very kind of you, Mr. Rollitt, but I do not require it.
Didn't thee write for it?
Showing letter to her.
Isn't this thy letter?
Clara, looking at it.
It is the first time I have seen it. It has the appearance of having been written by someone who was drunk overnight, possibly my father. Imitating other people's handwriting is one of the few things at which he has attained eminence.
Looks at Dexter.
Clara, my dear.
And perhaps it will be better, Mr. Rollitt, for me to take this opportunity of ending our relationship by telling you that I am already married.
Alan starts back.
Married?
Dexter, centre, frantic and jumping about and screaming and hissing the words out.
She ain't! It's a lie! Don't believe her, she ain't! She ain't! It's only a trick to try your love. Ah, you hussy! It's all been planned. This is all part of it. She ain't married. We planned it to test your love for her. Ah, you beast! I'll strangle you. I'll murder you. She's only trying it on to see what you say. It's a trick. Don't believe her. Don't believe her.
And have been for the last 3 years.
No, she ain't been, Mr. Rollitt. It's a lie. It's a lie. It's a lie. She says it to spite her old father. Ah, you devil, you.
Silence!
Dexter, cowed, but continuing.
She's not married. I'm her father.
Alan, pointing to door centre.
And leave the room, afore I forget thee art an old man.
Turns him right, backs Dexter up to centre door. Dexter slinks out, muttering.
She ain't married. It's a lie. It's a lie.
Exit Dexter, centre. Alan, turning to Clara.
What does it all mean?
That I've been playing with you only for the sake of sponging on you, and to get money out of you for my father and husband. I haven't had much myself. And then at last I'm grown tired of it.
Ye might have had all the money thee wanted, lass, without deceiving me.
Clara, falling on her knees before him.
Forgive me, Alan. You don't know what my life has been. Dragged up among thieves and sharpers, taught to trick and lie before I could speak plainly. I have never known what truth and ornament except as a dim longing. All the humanity, all the womanhood has been dried out of me till I am only the thing you see me. A vulture, a human beast of prey. Ah, Alan, thank God for your sake that I am married and that you have escaped me. Forget me. It is the only thing you can do. You can never hate me as I loathe myself. You can never despise me as I shudder at my own life.
Alan puts his hand to his own forehead.
Poor lass. Poor lass.
Clara takes Alan's hand.
You are the only man that has been good to me, and I have brought you only pain and shame.
Alan raising her.
Ah, never mind that, lass. Thee didn't mean to do it. Come, I'd be more sorry for thee than for myself. I could see what sort of life they had got around thee, and I wanted to take thee away from it all. I can do so little for thee now.
You have taught me, Alan, that there are good men in the world. Forgive me for having taught you that there are bad women.
Not bad, Clara. I guess there's been more sinned against than sinning. Thy life has been very dark, and thee stumbled here and there. God grant that it may grow brighter for thee one day.
Ah, Alan, don't keep speaking kindly to me. Don't think kindly of me. Despise me. I can bear that. I am used to it.
No, lass, I can't do that. I shall always think kindly of thee. I have loved thee too well to change now, because I knows thy lot's harder than I thought it war.
Clara turns and looks at Alan.
Try not to think of me at all, Alan. I am not worth it. Forget me. There is one who loves you better than I could ever do, and who is good and pure.
Rises.
You men never see the love that is under your feet. You reach only for what is beyond you. Go back to her, Alan. She will make you a better wife than I could ever have done.
Who is this man? Your husband?
Luke Cranbourne.
She does not look at Alan.
Luke Cranbourne?
Looks nervously at door centre, and then at clock, then crosses to door and stands near it. He assumes to do this naturally and not let Clara notice his anxiety.
We were married secretly before he left for America. Not even my father knew until a day or two ago.
And do you care for him?
With such love as a woman can feel without respect. He was the first that I can remember even speaking a kind word to me. He's the only human being I have to cling to. And he is good to me in his way.
Looks up at Alan.
I don't expect we shall ever see each other again. For your sake, I wish we had never met. For myself, my life will always seem a bit brighter for the love that an honest man once had for me.
Alan, taking her hand in his.
Goodbye. If ever thee wants a friend, Allen Rollitt, Woodbarrow Farm, Exmoor, will find him.
Kissing her on the forehead.
God bless thee, Clara.
Goodbye.
She goes without a word, right. After a few seconds, enter Luke Centre, announced by Peters. Luke, coming down.
How do you do, dear boy?
Shaking hands. Alan does so listlessly and almost unconsciously.
I wanted to see you particularly this morning before I went to the city. I've come across something that will just about double your fortune. Here.
Laying papers on table left, and taking up and pouring out a glass of wine.
Do have such capital wine, Rollitt. I really must help myself to a glass. It is a splendid scheme.
Very like, but we won't discuss it now.
Taking notes from his pocketbook.
I want thee to leave by the noon train for the continent.
Luke turns round face to audience, glass in left hand.
What's up?
Alan crosses left centre, hands him the notes.
Thy wife can join thee there afterward.
Luke starts and looks hard at Alan.
And thee can get away to Australia or somewhere in that direction.
And why, pray?
Because there is a man in the next room who be more anxious to see thee than thee may be to see him.
What man?
Richard Hanningford.
Luke lets fall the glass.
Good God! They've given the signal to call him in. Quick!
Luke rushes in terror to door at back.
Not that way.
Luke, bewildered and helpless with fright, turns wildly about like a hunted thing, not knowing which way to fly. Is about to make for other door when handle at door at back is heard to move.
Too late. Keep where thee art.
Luke, clinging to Alan's arm.
Save me!
Alan thrusts him behind door at centre as it opens and enter Hanningford, and Purtwee following. Alan goes right. Hanningford comes down and stands centre. Purtwee remains near door and is about to close it. Alan, who has moved down to right centre, nervously with attempt to appear calm and careless.
Leave the door, Mr. Purtwee. Leave the door.
Wide open?
Yes, it's fearfully hot in there.
Wiping his brow. Hanningford, looking at him suspiciously.
I don't find it so. I think we'll have it shut over this job.
Turns to door.
No, don't shut it. Don't shut it.
Why not?
Looks hard at Alan.
Why, don't I tell you? It's so close, so...
Hanningford crosses, goes to door centre and locks it, then returns, eyeing Alan sternly. Luke has crept behind the curtain, which hangs like a pillar by the side of the door. Alan watches with intense suspense.
Well, you gave the signal.
Alan right centre, a little to front of Hanningford. He keeps in front of Hanningford all through the scene until Luke has got away and prevents his turning around. He is very excited, but tries to appear careless, the result being a slightly hysterical manner. When Luke comes from behind the curtain, and while he is crossing, Alan catches Hanningford by the lapels of his coat, and holds and works him round so that his back is to Luke. He grows more and more eager and intense until Luke is off, when he gradually subsides into a quieter manner, but not too suddenly. At Hanningford's hint that he has had too much brandy, he catches at the idea to cover his excitement, to account for his conduct.
Yes, my dear fellow, but I were going to explain to thee. It weren't the signal. It were an accident. I dropped the glass by accident. Thee see I had just had a glass of brandy.
More than one glass, cousin?
Perhaps it were two.
First movement of Luke. At this point, Luke creeps from behind curtain. Purtwee sees him, and is about to make an exclamation when Alan, covering his actions by assumed drunkenness, lunges half round and catches Purtwee on his shoulder, clutching it tightly with his left hand while holding Hanningford with his right, laughing boisterously all the time. Purtwee understands and remains silent. Alan grows more and more excited, laughs.
Well now, look here, Hanningford. Cousin Dick, my long-lost...
Laughs as before and slaps him on the shoulder. Hanningford, impatient, half turns round. Alan seizes his coat with both hands and keeps him round.
No, look, thee, here, Cousin Dick. Now you say this Cassidy, this creeping, crawling, lying cur, Dan Cassidy, tried to murder thee.
Hanningford again seems as though he would turn round.
And these papers that you sent me, well, I sent 'em on to Purtwee. Ah, he's a sharp one.
Door clicks after Luke's exit.
Purtwee, he'll know who's who. He'll put us right. Won't he, Purtwee, old friend? Won't he?
He slaps Purtwee on back, laughing boisterously and half staggering forward into Purtwee's arms. Luke has got away by door right, and from now Alan's excitement gradually subsides, and an air of exhaustion follows.
Say, are you drunk or playing the fool? Where's this man Cassidy?
I don't know.
Isn't he coming here?
No.
Didn't you leave me to believe
that you should be brought face to face with him? Yes, but I've changed my mind since then.
I understand. It was only a trick to give you time to get him out of the way. You thought that without him I should not be able to prove my case. I thought I was dealing with an honest man and a friend, and I offered to share the money with you.
And I tell you to take the whole of it.
A pause. Hanningford steps back and stares at him.
I have learnt enough within the last few minutes to believe that you are the man you say you are. And if so, take it all. You offered me £100,000 to give thee Dan Cassidy. I offer thee £200,000 to let him go his way in peace. Come, you may find it hard to prove the art Hanningford afore the law. Prove it to me and Mr. Purtwee, and give me thy hand on it, that thee'll never seek to find Dan Cassidy or harm him, and thee art old Hanningford's heir, and I, Allen Rollitt, farmer and yeoman.
Your secrets are your own, cousin. I dearly have loved to have my revenge on the hound, but if Dan Cassidy is worth £100,000 to you, you can have him. I shouldn't have thought he was.
He goes free, so far as you're concerned, forever.
Forever?
Right, Dick Hanningford.
They grasp hands.
And now we'll say goodbye for today, if you don't mind. Mr. Purtwee will see thee tomorrow and arrange things. I like to be quiet a bit just now.
You've had a rough morning, cousin, and I guess the kindest thing I can do is to take myself off. Goodbye.
Shakes hands.
Goodbye, Mr. Purtwee.
Goodbye, Mr. Hanningford. I will write to you tomorrow.
Hanningford goes to door centre.
No worry. Goodbye.
Exit centre.
Well, I can't understand you, my boy. It's really a very quixotic thing to do. Why shouldn't the man suffer for his crime?
Because he can't suffer without bringing suffering to them, as I'd rather spare. Because he's the husband of the woman I have been calling Clara Dexter.
You don't say that, lad. When did you learn it?
About 5 minutes ago.
Hanningford said true. It's been a rough morning for you.
Going up to Allen and laying his hand on his shoulder.
Would you rather that I stopped with you a bit, lad, or left you alone?
Leave me alone, old friend.
Purtwee goes to centre door.
I shall be off soon.
Purtwee at door centre.
Where are you going to?
I'm going back to Woodbarrow Farm. I've had enough of the big world. I've had enough of fine folks and their ways. I'm going back to my own people. I'm going back to see the faces of them as I know loves me, to feed the hands of them as I know thinks well of me. I'm going back home.
Purtwee exit right. Allen stands left by fire. Stage darkens and scene changes. Slow tableau. Music plays till change of scene and through scene 2. Scene 2. Same as Act 1. Time, evening. Fire burning brightly and lamp lit on table where supper is laid. Deborah discovered by fire, attending to cooking operations. Mrs. Rollitt by fire, laying supper.
Be it done, lass?
Deborah, who is kneeling down, looking into oven.
Yes, Aunt, just a turn.
Mrs. Rollitt, crossing and looking over Deborah's shoulder.
Ah, that be just right. There's a good cook, lass.
Crossing back to table.
Ah, how unused to like a veal pasty.
It's a bad thing going to bed, though, ain't it, Aunt?
Ah, anything be bad for them as ain't got no stomachs, and underdone bricks be all right for them as has.
Gets dishes from dresser, lays table.
Besides, we ain't going to bed yet. Us'll sit and have a chat after supper.
It seems so lonely of an evening here now.
Looking into fire.
So it do, lass. Ah, the lads bean't so big to look at, but they leaves a rare space behind 'em when they goes away.
Deborah, after a pause, still gazing dreamily into fire.
I wonder if he'll ever come back.
Aye, he'll come back, never fear.
What? To stop?
Ah, to stop.
What makes you think so, Aunt?
I dunno. It's never seemed real to me, any on it. I'm awaiting every day to hear and lift the latch and walk in to find as it all had been a dream. So I allus lay for 3.
Enter Alan Centre. He is dressed much as in Act 1. He shuts the door and stands by it.
Well, Mother?
Mrs. Rollitt, staring at him.
Alan! Lad!
Bewildered, not grasping it. Deborah, having risen, stands with the hot pie that she has that moment taken from the oven, transfixed.
I've come home, you see, to stop, for good. Are thee glad to see me, Mother?
Come home? To stop? For good? Aww.
Rushes across with a cry of joy and hugs him up centre.
I said he would. I said he would. I said he would. My boy, my boy. And all the money and Miss Dexter?
Alan, taking off his hat and throwing it down at back.
Shadows, Mother, that have passed away, out of my life forever. I'll tell thee all about it later on. Never mind tonight. Let's think only about ourselves.
Going to Deborah, right.
Are thee glad to see me?
Mrs. Rollitt pushes them together from behind, right. Deborah, still with pie in her hands, puts her face up. Alan bends down and kisses it. Mrs. Rollitt catches the two in her arms and embraces both at once, laughing. Deborah holds pie out at arm's length to save it.
Mind the pie, Mother.
Mrs. Rollitt, still embracing them.
Are thee hungry, lad?
Rather.
Bless 'un. And thee've come back just in time for supper, as thee allus used to.
Sits upstage top of table.
Can thee eat veal pasty?
Can I eat veal?
Taking off overcoat and throwing it on chair.
Let me get it on, that's all.
Poor boy. Come and sit ye down.
Pushing him in chair left of table.
Where be the potatoes, Deb?
Deborah, bewildered, turns round and round.
I don't know.
Well, have a look in the saucepan then.
Sits back of table right centre. Alan left, Deborah right.
Thee won't find them by turning round and round. Now, come, lad, and get a bit inside thee. Us'll do the talking afterwards.
Deborah potters about between fire and table in a bewildered manner. She brings potatoes and puts them in front of Alan.
Ah, it do smell lovely, don't it?
Sniffing at pie.
Never thee mind smelling it, thee taste it. Lud, how thin thee art looking, lad.
To Deborah, who is almost doing so.
Don't pour the beer into the pie, child, and look where thee's put the potatoes.
Takes jug away from her. Deborah, sitting down, laughing.
I don't know what I'm doing.
Takes saucepan off table.
Well, us can see that.
And how's everything been going on? How's the colt?
Kicked Parsons clean into the ditch yestermorning, the little dear.
All are now seated.
No, didn't.
One of the guinea hens is dead. The little one of all.
Ah, what? The one that's used to squint?
Yes, Parsons left his shot on the pigsty wall, and she ate 2 ounces. Oh, and you remember Jim?
What, the bantam?
Yes, he's given his own father such a licking, and won't let him come near the yard.
Plucky little beggar. Serve the old un right. He were always a bully. Now, Mother.
About to hand her the pie.
My mother, thee are crying.
No, I ain't. Go on with thee supper, lad.
Alan, looking at Deborah.
And why, here be Deb, crying too.
The two women laugh through their tears. Alan joins them as the curtain descends.
It's with joy, lad. It's with joy.
Slow curtain. End of Act 3. End of Woodbarrow Farm by Jerome K. Jerome.